After rebirth, I returned to Miaojiang to inherit the family business. Author, Yan Guhong. Copywriting. Wu Rong was aggrieved in her previous life, and the property she earned with half her life was all cheap for that pair of scumbags and sluts. Unexpectedly, when he closed and opened his eyes, he was reborn. But the world after his rebirth seems, a little, not quite right. Scientific subversion, supernatural recovery. Ant is a great dancer in the square, the pens in the stationery store are out of stock, and the whole society has set off a metaphysics craze. What's even more weird is that since the day Wu Rong was reborn, strangers have been scrambling to call him. Stranger A, Wu Rong, don't die. Remember, you must go on a trip on September 15, 2142, or you will die. Stranger B, boss, the boss is me. You die quickly, and we will rule the world together after death. Stranger C, ha 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 ha. Wu Rong, I am back, you wait, I will eat you up one bite at a time, to relieve my hatred. Stranger D, hello, is this Wu Rong? I am the head of the Federal Security Service. Please pay attention to your own safety and don't die. Wu Rong? I heard that after my death, I became the strongest ghost king in the world and almost ruled the world? Something went wrong in this spiritually revived world, and countless people and ghosts were reborn from the future ruled by the ghost king Wu Rong with terror. At this time, Wu Rong, the tyrannical and bloodthirsty ghost king who is full of resentment and hatred in the future, is still just a rebellious little bastard, Brother Rong. Some people wish that Wu Rong would never die, and just live like a bastard, while others are eager to wait for the ghost king to come sooner, or even be so obsessed with ghosts that they want to kill him if they love him. Wu Rong? What the is this? Thus, under the multiple influences of the reborn people, Wu Rong's life has been colorful and flourishing ever since, and he even went back to Miaojiang by mistake to inherit the family business. A few years later, the reborn found out that the plot wasn't quite right. Where did Ghost King Wu Rong go? Who is this genius shaman who appears on the world news all day long? This article is purely fictitious, any similarity is purely coincidental. Everyone should believe in science. Content tags, Rebirth of Strong Spirits, Gods and Monsters. Shuangwen search keywords, protagonist, Wu Rong, Fu Qingnan supporting role, pre-received articles. Horror tour group Infinite Stream, Omega goes through the Big Fierce A training game every night for collection. Others, Feng Shui One sentence introduction, I heard that I became the strongest villain after my death. Conception, after the protagonist is reborn, he will work hard to make the world a better place. Comments on works. Once Wu Rong was reborn, he wanted to take revenge by torturing the scum, but who knew that the world would change after his rebirth? The ant is a master of dancing in the square, the pens in the stationery store are out of stock, and the whole society has set off an upsurge of metaphysics in the world of spiritual recovery. What's even more weird is that while Wu Rong's worldview was being subverted, people and ghosts kept calling him. What? After he dies, he will become the strongest ghost king. For the sake of world peace, it is best to live a long life. Facing a group of younger brothers and enemies who have traveled back from the future, Wu Rong in this life is destined to have a magnificent life. The worldview of this article is novel and interesting, and the writing is relaxed and witty to describe the world of ghosts and ghosts after the supernatural recovery. And what kind of sparks will the protagonist Wu Rong collide with when he faces those reborn people who want to kill him, become the Ghost King as soon as possible, or want to keep him alive for a long time? Let us wait and see. This must be a dream. Sitting in the bar booth, Wu Rong thought with a blank expression. Otherwise, how could he have seen Sunan, a scumbag, combing his silly pot head from college, sitting opposite him? Wu Rong died, on the highway on a rainy night, the night he heard that Sunan was going to marry the leader's daughter. At that time, Wu Rong had just finished his business trip, so he rushed back overnight without taking a break. There was a cake for Sunan in the back seat. He made a detour to Yangjiaping to buy it. Sunan said that he missed the taste of the past. In the early morning, Sunan's birthday was about to pass, so he drove so fast and in such a hurry that after the car accident, the flesh and blood and the cake were rotten into one piece. It's just that after Wu Rong's death, instead of going to the underworld, his soul floated all the way home, watched Sunan drop a few drops of cat urine at his funeral, turned around and bought a diamond ring with his money, and was all smiles at the wedding holding the hand of the leader's daughter. They announced the success of the 5-year long-distance love race between the two. Seeing this Wu Rong, it dawned on me that this scumbag who co-authored Sunan and the leader's daughter didn't happen to be together, but they got along for 5 or 6 years. It's ridiculous that Wu Rong was blind, and believed that the two of them would grow old together. I'm afraid that in Sunan's eyes, he is a deceitful ATM man. Rong, how many times have I told you not to smoke? Didn't you promise me that you will learn well? What is the difference between you and those gangsters if you continue like this? Hearing the familiar voice of admonition, Wu Rong reflexively wanted to choke off his cigarette. Sunan couldn't smell the smell of cigarettes. During the years with him, every time Wu Rong got hungry for cigarettes, he would secretly hide downstairs to smoke. Only when the smell of cigarettes dissipated did he dare to go home. Just as he took down the cigarette, Wu Rong paused. He raised his head, his scrutinizing gaze slowly moved from Sunan's eyes to his chin. The face was exactly the same as in memory, and the eyes were full of concern and sincerity. Just as he was meditating, the cigarette ash fell on the table, causing Sunan to frown, and couldn't help but say, "Look at you, you smell like cigarettes. Did you sleep in the bar again these days? Wrong, you haven't been home for a long time, so what if auntie beats you hard? Don't you want you to learn unmistakable, it is this person." Before Sunan could finish speaking, Wu Rong directly pressed the cigarette into his hand. "Whether it's a dream or a hallucination. Don't even think about waking up from this dream until he's done venting his anger. Ah, it's hot." Sunan's screams attracted the few people in the bar to look this way frequently, but they were blocked by other waiters smiling after a few glances. Wu Rong was ignorant when he was young, so he followed an elder brother. He was taciturn and could fight, he was as ruthless as a wolf cub, he was favored by his elder brother, he became Brother Rong when he was only 16, and now he is 18 years old. The bar street is his territory. No one dares to stand up for Sunan here. "Wu Rong, what are you doing, are you crazy?" Sunan clasped his hands and questioned, with more puzzlement than anger on his face. He didn't realize it for a moment. His face that had always been gentle and camouflaged revealed a trace of impatience and suspicion, which was even more annoying in Wu Rong's eyes. He was just about to steal a chair and do another ruthless one, but when he looked up, he saw a stack of money on Sunan's desk. There are more than a dozen red old man tickets, all of which are brand new. Wu Rong vaguely remembered this incident. When Sunan first entered college, his family was poor, and he went to work part-time after class. "Once I said that my sister from my hometown was really short of money, so I borrowed some money from Wu Rong, and many times later, I said I borrowed money but never paid it back." The previous Wu Rong didn't care, but now Wu Rong is different. Wu Rong took the money back directly, and Sunan was stunned to see it. He seemed to understand, and said in a tone that seemed helpless but actually stood on the commanding heights, "If you don't want to lend me money, you don't have to be so angry. My sister is just coming to stay for a few days. The youth hostel can make do. I just say this to you because the little girl loves you. I don't want to make trouble outside, so many people are watching." Too ignorant Sunan suddenly couldn't continue talking, and Wu Rong in front of him looked at him as if he had changed, and he couldn't tell. He was no longer the boy who was so indifferent but easy to fool. Now Wu Rong glanced over, making him feel suffocated. "Youth hostel, I'm afraid that person is not used to living in it." Wu Rong patted his face with the money, and her thin lips curled into a hint of sarcasm. "This money is enough to entertain my sister from my hometown, but not enough to entertain my sister from the Lin family." "Sister Lin, Wu Rong, what happened to you today?" A flash of panic flashed in Sunan's eyes, and he calmed down. Regardless of his own hand injury, he comforted Wu Rong first. I know that you recently failed to raise a ghost and quarreled with your aunt, and you are angry, but don't make fun of this pretentious matter. Lin Wenwen and I are just classmates. Don't you know who I really like? Sun An's voice became lower and lower, and finally turned into a gentle smile. He even wanted to hold Wu Rong's hand. Don't be angry, it's not good for your health. Fuck, brother Rong, I can't take it anymore. Before Wu Rong could get angry, the younger brothers watching from the side couldn't help it. One of them slapped Sun An's hand away, took out a stack of photos and slammed them on his face, scowling, brother Rong. You used to protect this kid, and the brothers gave him some face. But this thing dares to steal people behind your back. Even if you teach me a lesson today, I will say it. Fuck it, you're almost touching someone's chest, why are you pretending to be a wolf with a big tail? There were many photos, just blowing to the place where the smoke was burning. Sun An's face was pale, he didn't know whether it was the pain or the panic when he saw the ambiguous couple cuddling together in the photo, until he was roughly picked up by the younger brothers and thrown to the ground, punched and kicked. He was completely flustered. At this time, Sun An still had illusions, and he only looked at Wu Rong for help, and said in a low voice with pain, Wu Rong, listen to my explanation. This kind of thing happened before, but Wu Rong would always believe him in the end. Sun An knew very well that this man seemed to have a stubborn temper, but he was actually very coaxable. As long as this incident is over, those who beat him today will have bad luck in the future. Wu Rong would definitely listen to his explanation, Sun An firmly believed, feeling ruthless in his heart. The younger brothers felt guilty even after beating him. One or two secretly looked at Wu Rong. Normally, he would protect Sun An under his wings and would not let them really beat him up. I always listen to Sun An's explanation, and I don't bother to care about it in the end. Until they noticed Wu Rong's condescending gaze on Sun An. So strange, so indifferent, like looking at a piece of garbage. Continue. With Wu Rong's words, the little brothers were stunned in disbelief, and immediately beat them harder like having fun. Wu Rong didn't look at Sun An's distraught face. Instead, he stared thoughtfully at his slender, bony hands. Since she was 18 years old again, her mother should still be alive. Wu Rong's father died early, and so did his mother. During their lifetime, they never stopped arguing. Wu Rong spent more time in bars than at home. But after looking at the black and white portraits for several years, the complex emotions finally settled into nostalgia. I don't know how long this dream will last, if it is enough for him to go home and take a look. Wu Rong finally lost his heart for Sun An, and the younger brothers were happy as if they were celebrating a holiday. Two of them winked at each other, grinning and shoving someone out from behind. Hey, what kind of dog is not worthy of carrying shoes for us, brother Rong? One younger brother kicked Sun An violently, while the other excitedly pushed the man to Wu Rong's side, winking at him, brother Rong, we can't eat good apples but eat rotten peaches instead. Here, this little singer, I just like you very much, and I am very happy to have a chance to talk to you. After that, he turned his head to look at Sun An, rolled his eyes and taunted, our brother Rong is really obsessed with you, so he likes you. With such a doggy virtue, he still wants to eat inside and out, and he doesn't urinate to take care of himself. You really think others are blind? Thinking about going home, Wu Rong casually glanced at the pushed good apple, and suddenly froze. At the same time, Sun An was writhing in pain on the ground, and Sun An, who was in a state of embarrassment, was unwilling to complain, and was also stunned for a moment. Whispering voices came from the bar. The person who was pushed out was really good looking. His eyebrows and eyes were like ice sculptures. Standing there is out of tune with the atmosphere of the bar, like a crane visiting a pheasant nest. Others were stunned because of his looks, but Wu Rong was stunned because of the Taoist robe he was wearing. This man turned out to be a Taoist priest. How could a Taoist priest sing in a bar? Noticing the nonchalant gazes of other people, and thinking about the fact that she became a ghost after death, Wu Rong couldn't help but think about gods, and ghosts, and felt very uneasy. Could this Taoist priest come to pick him up to go to the underworld? Seeing that Sunan was beaten beyond recognition, and the screams became louder and louder, the younger brothers finally stopped, and Huang Mao, who took the lead, came to ask Wu Rong for instructions. "Brother Rong, this bastard put on the sack, back alley." "Okay. Rong. Rong, listen to me." The younger brothers fiercely pulled Sunan, who was limp on the ground, and dragged him out. Wu Rong ignored Sunan's unwilling gaze, but still focused on the Taoist priest. At the same time, the people in the bar also recalled the farce. "Little brother, your method is still too soft. If someone dares to steal someone from me, I will throw him to the East Ghost Realm. There are a lot of ghosts there. I will guarantee his beauty and happiness." A guest who was as skinny as dry wood laughed and said, he occupied a table by himself, with a bucket of instant noodles in front of him, and a bucket of instant noodles on the opposite side which was empty. The strange thing is that there are 2 chopsticks inserted vertically in the bucket of instant noodles, just like offering to the dead during Chinese New Year. There was a large area around him, and no one dared to sit with him as if others were afraid. Wu Rong frowned slightly. He seemed to see a dark phantom sitting opposite that person, with a small throat like the eye of a needle, but a distended abdomen like a pregnant woman. Su Ying salivated at the instant noodles, her long hair mopping the floor, rolled up the noodles and stuffed them into what seemed to be her mouth, swallowing very hard. "What is this stuff?" "Remuneration." The clear voice hit like ice and stones, calling back Wu Rong's attention. The voice seemed to contain some kind of charm, it was extremely pleasant to listen to. When the voice sounded, the black phantom sitting opposite the guests disappeared completely in fear. Wu Rong turned her head and saw the Taoist priest looking at her with clear eyes, so clear that one could see the bottom at a glance, like the warm sun in winter. Wu Rong likes such eyes. He glanced at his younger brother. The younger brother leaned over with a flattering smile, and whispered in his ear, "Brother Rong, this is a wild Taoist priest who just came to our bar to apply for a resident singer. He has no masters and wants to ask for a living. Isn't this just in time? The brothers want to hire you to wash your eyes." The boy mentioned what kind of remuneration. "Cough cough, don't worry about it. If he doesn't know how to throw him out, he'll have to." "How many?" "What?" The younger brother was dumbfounded, and Wu Rong looked directly at the young Taoist priest. "How much is it?" 500. The little brother couldn't hold back his face. "You are a lion. You give you." Wu Rong stuffed all the money he snatched from Sunan into the hands of the Taoist priest. He was slow to react, but no matter how slow a person was, he would have sensed something was wrong when he saw that ghostly shadow. This may not be a dream, but it is definitely not the original ordinary world. After half his life, Wu Rong just wants to go home and see if his mother is still there. "There's too much money and I only take what is due." The Taoist frowned slightly, his expressionless face finally changed. But Wu Rong didn't say much to him, and hurriedly left the bar with his hands. The sky outside was gloomy, covered with thick clouds. It should be summer but it was like autumn. It was unspeakably cold. The street was still the street in memory, the crowds were bustling, and the buildings were not much different, but Wu Rong knew that there were many things. Everything has changed. Pen ferry for sale. Pen ferry for sale. The new pen ferry is for sale. The pen ferry who used to be 108, 208, and 308 is now all 28, all 28. Black dogs, pure natural black dogs, guaranteed not to be dyed dogs. Roots are pure black, pure blood. Buy black dogs, get black dog blood. Buy black dogs, get black dog blood. When I grow up, I want to be admitted to Tianxi Academy. My mother was very happy to hear that, and bought me my favorite XIX Lang jelly. The loudspeakers in the small shops on both sides are noisy, the sound is loud, and the advertisements hung on the central mall are not celebrity advertisements. On the posters, several young handsome teenagers dressed as Taoist priests are posing coldly, holding folk instruments such as erhu, pipa, and flute in their arms. The black and white characters on the banner are eye-catching. Helongshan Youth Group has released a new work, and the album signing event of King Jingjing is scheduled for July 29. Wu Rong subconsciously avoided the crowd and rubbed his eyes. From the moment he saw the phantom, he felt that his left eye was so painful that it was followed by sand, and he couldn't get it out no matter how much he rubbed it. Originally, Wu Rong wanted to buy a bottle of mineral water to take a bath, but just after entering the small shop to take a look, he backed out without saying a word. The shadows reflected behind the row of mineral water turned out to be rows of ghost heads. Wu Rong didn't know how he got back to the door of the shop at home. The world turned into a completely unfamiliar appearance. The strangeness was even more outrageous than a dream. The closer he was to home, the slower he walked. The world has changed so much. Wu Rong was afraid that his own mother would also change. It seems that it has not changed, and something is wrong. Hiding in the alley, Wu Rong silently lit a cigarette, watching her mother eagerly selling new paper money to guests. Laoliang shroud shop wreaths, shrouds, bands, feng shui, incense paper, urns. Undertake cremation, burial on stop service. Service line. Wu Rong's mother's surname and his father's surname are Liang, so he left this shroud shop for his mother when he left early. Because her family opened a shroud shop, Wu Rong was isolated and excluded by her peers. Seeing the busy mother in front of the store now, looking at her familiar yet unfamiliar face, Wu Rong couldn't express the feeling in her heart. Jingle jingle, jingle jingle. The phone rang suddenly. Wu Rong frowned and wanted to hang up, but found that no matter how hard she pressed the phone, she couldn't get it off and kept ringing. Seeing the sharp sound of the phone attracting the attention of others, Wu Rong turned to the corner of the street before her mother could see her, but the phone still couldn't be connected. Could it be that the phone is broken? The monotonous bell rang repeatedly in the empty alley, as if it came from another world, with a ghostly aura, and Wu Rong was the only one in the alley. Something was wrong, his intuition sounded the alarm, goosebumps appeared, and Wu Rong wanted to throw away the phone, but in the next moment, his movements suddenly stopped. A creepy chewing sound came from the side of the trash can, like a wild dog stealing food. A black figure buried its head in it and devoured it, and when Wu Rong noticed it, it also raised its head, looking over numbly and greedily. "You smell delicious." "Hum." The sharp wind came suddenly. Wu Rong reacted very quickly and kicked it away. He had fought since he was a child, and this kick hit the most vulnerable abdomen of ordinary people, and he did not spare any strength. But his foot felt as if he had kicked hard steel, and he was in pain from the shock. At this time, the true face of the monster also appeared in front of Wu Rong. Its head is huge, like a drum, but its throat is smaller than a needle. It turned out to be the ghost sitting opposite the customers in the bar. Wu Rong kicked its bulging belly like a pregnant woman, but it didn't cause any harm. When the ghost image took shape, the surrounding temperature dropped sharply, surrounded by black mist, and filled with gloom. Wu Rong let out a breath, and it turned out to be a hazy white mist that only occurs when the temperature is low. This is not an illusion, the ghost is changing the surrounding environment. Seeing the black mist spreading rapidly, Wu Rong turned around and ran in the opposite direction without hesitation at the shroud shop not far from the street corner. At this moment, he had only one thought in his mind, that is, the farther away from home the better. Sure enough, the ghost immediately ran after him, and the area where the fog descended also spread in the direction of Wu Rong's escape. The temperature continued to drop. Gradually Wu Rong's body seemed to be frozen and he could not move, and soon he would be too frozen to move. It's just that Wu Rong's nerves are different from ordinary people, as if he is not afraid by nature, he can still think in this critical situation of being chased by a ghost. Does calling 110 work? Wu Rong suddenly realized that the phone that couldn't be hung up just now hadn't rang since the beginning of the chase. At the same time, the mobile phone is getting colder and colder, and it is like a lump of ice in the hand. He looked down, and saw a thin layer of frost forming on the screen of the phone at some point. The frost is deep and shallow, outlining a fuzzy pattern. In the blink of an eye, the pattern became more and more obvious, with a little bit of blood oozing strangely, and in the end it looked like a grimace of a child bleeding from all 7 orifices. Again. The cold air was getting closer and closer. Wu Rong lost all feeling on his back. The ghosts had already pounced on his back. There were wolves in front and tigers in back. Wu Rong's eyes sharpened. He turned around brazenly and prepared to fight to the death. Beep. An extremely abrupt voice sounded in the quiet alley, and the phone in Wu Rong's hand was connected at this moment. The buzzing sound of electric current came from the mobile phone, as if the signal was not good, and then clack cluck, cluck cluck. The children's crisp and silver bell-like laughter resounded through the alley. It was clearly an innocent and childish voice, but it was creepy to listen carefully. Furious. Wang. I finally found you. Wu Rong didn't think too much about it. When the sound rang, he had already thrown the mobile phone into the mouth of the starving ghost. It took only half a minute for the pitch-black ghost to descend, the surrounding light dimmed, the temperature plummeted and it was extremely cold, the high trash can was rotten and cracked, the wall was rolled and mottled, and the bottom was covered with dirty mold spots. It seems that an extremely evil force has affected the surrounding environment, and Wu Rong, who is trapped in it, has nowhere to retreat and can only fight hard. Anyway, they are all ghosts. If there is a fight, he still has a chance. Ogulu. The ghost directly swallowed the phone. Its upper body was already lying on Wu Rong's back, and its long black and dirty arms strangled his neck. Wu Rong shuddered. The place where he and the ghost came into contact seemed to be covered with icicles. It was terribly cold, as if he was in a freezer, unable to move at all. His skin was pale from the cold, and his lips lost their color. Even though he knew he had to fight hard, his gradually blurred mind could not control his frozen body. The green and foul-smelling saliva of the starving ghost dripped onto Wu Rong's shoulder, and he would be swallowed before he was frozen to death. Time is like standing still, stretching infinitely. At this moment, amidst the miserable howls, Wu Rong's consciousness gradually recovered. Lang Yuan's sudden departure made his body start to warm up. He staggered a few steps. After he was able to control his body, Wu Rong walked a few steps away from the area before looking back to see what happened. What? The evil spirit was melting, and his bulging and hard abdomen became as soft as cream, and small turquoise handprints were printed from the inside. The handprint was very small, about the size of a 3 or 4-year-old child's slap, accompanied by the clear giggling sound of the child. The more joyful the laughter, the more tragic the ghost's wail. It scratched its belly frantically, and the moment Wu Rong turned its head, it let out a scream, and the belly that was swollen to paper-thin was finally torn apart by itself. Puff! There was a soft sound, like the sound of a balloon bursting. After the belly was torn open, the evil spirit quickly shriveled up, and within 2 or 3 seconds it became a mass of ashes. Roll out a half-corroded phone from the dross. Sizzling, sizzling, sizzling. The noisy electric sound was intermittent, and a satisfied belch could be faintly heard from the phone, accompanied by a childish laughter, innocently puzzled. My lord, thank you for the hospitality. When will you die? Only after death. Zilla. This mobile phone, which has suffered countless disasters, has finally been completely scrapped. The hustle and bustle of people gradually became normal. The sun set, the warm sunlight fell on the alley, the trash can returned to normal, the wall was not old and was hung on the wall, everything seemed like a lifetime away. Wu Rong took a deep breath, put on a stiff face, shook her hands, and lit a cigarette for herself. People who are stimulated too much will become a little numb, at least when they return to the deserted shroud shop. No one can see anything from Wu Rong's expressionless face. Looking at the strange mother, his tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Even if the world has changed, the closest relatives are still the same after all. Wu Rong moved her lips and said in a low voice, "Mom. You still know how to come back? I thought you died outside long ago, and forgot that I am your mother." The witch mother was surprised when she saw the person coming back, then she pushed Wu Rong in with a straight face, closed the door, and chattered impatiently, "You are full of ghosts, the little has gone to raise ghosts again, I think you still hope that day, make me so angry that I ascend to heaven and then raise your old mother. Be an ordinary person and don't listen. Hurry up and get out of the back and wash it with grapefruit leaves. It's bad luck." The second floor of the shroud shop was a cramped place. The witch mother pushed Wu Rong into the bathroom, turned around and pulled a lot of grapefruit leaves, and put the water in. Before leaving, she hesitated at the door of the bathroom. The witch mother was silent for a long time, as if she had made up her mind, and said with a little hesitation, "Little brat, the old man in the village called today. Your grandmother is getting old and not in good health. It's time to tell you something. Buckle." There was a rhythmic knock on the door from downstairs, and the interrupted mother witch didn't want to pay attention to it, but the knock on the door was repeated several times without stopping. Finally, she raised her eyebrows in anger, rolled up her sleeves and stepped down. Stairs, Pola rushed out the door and shouted, "Didn't you see that the door is closed? Get out of my way, no matter whether people or ghosts open the shop today." Click! A deformed and twisted little hand directly penetrated the door panel, stretched in and opened the lock. The door was pushed open, and two people, one old and one young, walked in from outside. They were all wearing black windbreakers and carrying a black leather bag in their hands. The old man was short and stooped, with creases all over his face and cloudy eyes. The deformed little hand disappeared under his windbreaker, just in time for Wu Rong, who followed him downstairs to see it. The young man, on the other hand, appeared relatively normal, only wearing a mask that tightly covered the lower half of his face. "Hello, I'm working in Section 7 of the Public Security Bureau. I'm Special Police Officer Jo Suan, Ghost number 1682. Jo Suan took out the black-skinned and silver-faced police officer's card, and opened it in front of Wu Rong, the witch mother, with a mild tone. The old man next to him didn't say a word, but stared at Wu Rong with a gloomy face and foggy eyes. At 6 hours 15 minutes and 32 seconds this afternoon, the spiritual reaction in the residential building area of the back alley of Yangjiaping Pedestrian Street in Hualongpo District exceeded the standard. According to the monitoring, it was confirmed that a level spiritual recovery incident occurred. In order to prevent the spread of the vicious incident, the residents in this area all to accept the investigation, please cooperate. Cold rain fell on his face, and Sunan, who was dragged in a sack to the back alley and beaten severely, woke up at night. He was lying in the dump, his body was filthy and smelly, his white shirt was completely earth-colored, his body was full of wounds, the pain was terrific. Wu Rong's younger brother knows how to measure, and hits those places that are extremely painful but can't be seen from the outside. Even if Sunan went to the police station to complain, it was useless. Sunan, who looked as if he had been broken up, was suffocated to death. He was completely confused, and he didn't know why Wu Rong suddenly turned his face today. Did someone say something to him? Sunan couldn't figure it out, his face was gloomy, he shook the muddy water on his clothes, and stood up while leaning on the wall. Wu Rong is in a state of mind now, wait a few days, a few days. Sunan wasn't very afraid, he felt that Wu Rong must still care about him, that's why he was so angry. Wait for the anger to subside before coaxing him, or he will come back. As for Lin Wenwen, who finally got to talk, Sunan hesitated for a moment. Don't worry, this kind of woman with a good family background is like a donkey. Just follow her and don't take you seriously. Sometimes you have to be cold to make her think you are unusual. Sunan, who had confidence in his heart, was not so angry anymore. It was too late now, he couldn't go back to the dormitory under the curfew, and he had no money to stay in the hotel. Sunan was also reluctant to spend money. After thinking about it, he limped outside. Yangjiaping is a small town, and you can still see patches of old monastery houses when you walk outside the slightly bustling commercial street. Sunan walked for a long time until he arrived at a very remote and sparsely populated place. There is a small yard like a farmyard here, which is dilapidated, and it is midnight, and there are dogs barking pitifully inside. Sunan frowned and knocked on the door. The warm yellow light came on, and a young man with a cropped head and wearing black jeans walked out of the courtyard, full of hostility. He was holding a steel pipe in his hand, which was covered in blood. Sunan said in a low voice, "Brother Hu, I want to stay for one night." "Hey, isn't this a high-achieving student? If someone beats you up like this, it won't be your little face." Brother Hu joked and mocked, and rudely took out the key from his belt and opened the door lock. "Come in, I'm a kind-hearted person, and I always like to take in some homeless kittens and puppies." Sunan went in silently, and the door clattered shut behind him. The small courtyard is not big, but there are a lot of sundries. There are several sacks lying here and there beside the exposed water pipes. The ground is full of dark water, and it is hard to tell whether it is blood or water. After Sunan entered the yard, he felt that there were many eyes watching him from the dark. Brother Hu cursed vulgarly, and threw the steel pipe in his hand out. "You bastards, what are you looking at? Get lost!" The steel pipe fell hard in a dark corner, something was hit, and there was a whine, and a group of black shadows ran away in a panic. By the dim light, they were all skinny stray cats and dogs. Sunan slept in a side room, with old and moldy quilts, the stench of fermented blood mixed with cat and dog feces, the constant howling of animals, and tossing and turning in pain all over his body. He barely fell asleep until midnight. "I, Sunan, will definitely go to the capital, go to the best Tianxi University, and become a Tianxi admired by thousands of people. Wu Rong, Lin Wenwen, wait for me." Sunan gritted his teeth and vowed to fall into a deep sleep, but not long after, he started to twitch all over his body, and rolled directly to the ground as if in a fit of epilepsy, hitting his head the edge of the bed. "No, don't kill me, Wu Rong, don't kill me, I didn't push you out on purpose, I didn't kill you. Wu Rong, please let me go, please let me go. It hurts so bad, dog, don't bite me, Wu Rong, let me go, let me go." Sunan seemed to be haunted by some kind of nightmare, his eyes were straightened, struggling and writhing in pain, his whole body was shaking like chaff, yelling in panic and despair, causing cats and dogs to bark outside, and Brother Hu, who was awakened, angrily kicked open the door, picked up Sunan's collar, slapped him twice. "Call your ancestor's soul in the middle of the night, if you want to die, I will grant you." These two slaps woke Sunan up. His face was pale, he was panting like a dehydrated fish, his face was blank and frightened, and he murmured, Lu Hu? Didn't you get bitten to death by Wu Rong's dog? Difficult, am I dead too? Wow! A lame little native dog was pawing beside the bed, tilting its head to look at Sunan curiously, its short black tail wagging like a flower. Who knew that Sunan was terrified when he saw it, and moved back in a hurry. His nose was smelly and his crotch was completely wet. Wu Rong, please don't let it bite me, let me go, let me go. Damn your grandma's legs. Lu Hu furiously slapped Sunan, whose mouth was full of blood, and opened his mouth to spit out some teeth. Seeing that he was so frightened that he peed out of his mouth and uttered nonsense, Brother Hu went out with a sullen face, but after a while, he came in with a bowl of blood and splashed Sunan directly. An's face. The steaming black dog's blood dripped down. Seeing the hands, Sunan's eyes froze, and he passed out again with a thud. This coma lasted until the next morning, when Sunan finally calmed down from extreme fear, he realized in a daze that he had been reborn. Reborn back to a year ago. The author has something to say, the scumbag is reborn from the King of Ghosts line. A year later, Sunan died. When he was admitted to the capital Tianxi University and became a first-year leader, he had a stable relationship with Lin Wenwen, and when he led his classmates out to practice in high spirits, he was brutally killed by the ghost Wu Rong. Sunan clearly remembered how the black dog soul who followed Wu Rong tore him to pieces and swallowed him, biting down even the bones and soul. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid, now that Wu Rong is still alive, there is nothing to be afraid of. Sunan was kicked out by Lu Hu. He didn't attend class or go to the dormitory, so he just sat down on a random place, biting his nails nervously. Suddenly he stood up abruptly. No, Yang Jiaping can't stay anymore, it's already June 15th, and the Lantern Ghost King will cross the border in at most 3 months, and the whole Yang Jiaping will become a ghost town. He ran a few steps in the direction of the dormitory, and then stopped suddenly, grabbing his hair full of dried blood and looking like a madman. No, no, I haven't got Lin Wenwen yet. Without her father, I can't go to the capital university. Heavenly Master, I want to be a Heavenly Master, I must be a Heavenly Master. 100 years ago, the world's spirituality revived, and ghosts descended on the ghost land. Ghosts are not afraid of physical attacks, they are not afraid of guns and ammunition, and human beings are declining. At the most critical time, most of the world is occupied by ghosts. Fortunately, the heaven and earth have changed, leaving a glimmer of life for human beings. Ghosts are born, Taoism is revived, talented people can be admitted to Tianxi universities all over the country, and learn the method of exorcising ghosts, and those with poor talents can also pay the price to raise ghosts in themselves, and use ghosts to deal with ghosts. The former is called a celestial master, and the latter is called a ghost raiser. People with similar abilities also appeared in other countries in the world. After many years, humans and ghosts finally reached a relatively balanced state. It's just that the vast majority of people in this world are still ordinary people, who have neither the talent to become celestial masters nor the stamina to support ghosts. Outside world. Li Gui Wu Rong was such an ordinary person during his lifetime. Wu Rong, yes, he is an ordinary person now. I can strike ahead of time, I can kill him first. No. After being violent intermittently, Sunan was terrified again. No, Wu Rong can't die, he must not die. Sunan vaguely remembered that he and Wu Rong should have had a good relationship during this time in his previous life, so after 3 months, when the Ghost King crossed the border, the Ghost Breeder and the Celestial Master fought battles, and ordinary people ran for their lives in a hurry, Wu Rong would sacrifice his life to protect him. Killed his way, even gave him the amulet. If it hadn't been for the unlucky falling into the ghost domain later, someone would have to sacrifice to escape. Sunan pushed Wu Rong out without hesitation. Seeing him being torn apart and devoured by the ghosts, Sunan was also afraid and sad. But everyone was dead, and soon he forgot about Wu Rong. Later, on the way to escape, Sunan ran into Lin Wenwen, who was separated from her family, and they survived by relying on the amulet Wu Rong left him. Along the way, we saw the truth in adversity, and the relationship between the two quickly warmed up. After being rescued, Lin Wenwen became his girlfriend, and she personally begged her father, who taught at Tianda University in the capital. Leader. At that time, Sunan was full of ambitions. This was the starting point for his prosperity, but Sunan never expected that when he led a team out for an internship a year later, he would be caught by Wu Rong, who had turned into a ghost. There are also levels of ghosts. Evil ghosts can destroy cities, let alone higher-level ghosts. Sunan has only seen Wu Rong as a ghost in his life. With just one glance, he has no strength to resist. However, Wu Rong could become a ghost within a year. Sunan didn't dare to gamble with the lessons learned from the past. What to do? Sunan's eyes are red, and now he opens and closes his eyes and his mind is full of Wu Rong's indifferent and cold eyes when he killed him, just like looking at pork on the chopping board, without a trace of emotion. His teeth chattered and rattled. Suddenly, Sun An's eyes widened. By the way, there is one person who can definitely kill Wu Rong. That person should be here now. Yes, he is, I will go to him, I have to go to him. Only he can change his destiny. Excuse me, both of you, go slowly. The two special police officers who claimed to be from the 7th Division of the Public Security Bureau had so many questions that they didn't finish their investigation until the next day. Except for the starving ghosts, Wu Rong told them in detail about the ghost phone calls, and took them to the alley in the middle of the night to watch them take away the corroded mobile phones and the ashes that looked like black charcoal. And his harvest is a special mobile phone with Jo Sun's phone number stored in it. Comrade, according to your description, you are likely to be targeted by some kind of level ghost. Jo Sun said solemnly, this phone is specially made by Kike. Once it calls you again, we will receive the news and rush to you as soon as possible. If there is anything unusual, you can call me immediately, even in the ghost domain it also works fine. What is the ghost domain and what is the 7th subject? After talking all night, Wu Rong has a general understanding. This world is indeed dangerous. Even in the safe zone, ordinary people will lose their lives if they are not careful. Wu Rong understood why he would insist on becoming a ghost breeder after confirming that he had no talent for a celestial master. In this world, only those who have power can live freely and happily, and my mother is also an ordinary person. In this world full of ghosts and monsters, in case of any accident, ordinary people are like fish on the chopping board, powerless to resist. Seeing that Wu Rong was still so calm after going through life and death, Jo Sun felt a little more appreciative in his eyes. This person has a firm will and is a good seed for raising ghosts, but unfortunately. Boy! A rough and hoarse voice sounded, terrible as hell, like the neighing of an old crow. Wu Rong lowered her head, and saw that the old man who hadn't said a word finally spoke, still staring at him with that uncomfortably straight gaze, each word with deep meaning. Boy, I think you should live 100 years. Don't die for me, you know. Remember, live a good life for me, don't risk your life. Two special policemen in black trench coats left, one in front of the other, until they turned around and couldn't see the shadow of Lao Yang's shroud shop. Jo Sun asked curiously, Mr. Ma, when did you learn to read faces? We are also partners, so you can show me too. The old man was silent and did not speak, but suddenly he let out a muffled snort, his already stooped body trembled, curled up in pain. Immediately afterwards, 2 extra eyeballs suddenly appeared on his sparse withered eyebrows. The eyeballs were as white as ink, and the pupils were red, spinning around strangely. At the same time, Ma Lao's loose skin swelled up, and the wrinkles were stretched out, gradually revealing a terrifying grimace of a baby under his left cheek. Damn it, why did the ghost baby suddenly turn back? Jo Sun was taken aback and immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. As soon as Jo Sun took off the mask, he saw the corners of his mouth split upwards, just like the slit girl in horror legends. Then Jo Sun opened his mouth. He has no teeth, and his black throat is bottomless. A white festering grimacing scar squirmed slightly while exuding a strong stench, as if it was about to come alive. When the ghost sore appeared, the ghost baby that was about to burst out of Ma Lao's face finally stopped swelling in fear. While the two were in a stalemate, Jo Sun hurriedly took out a yellow talisman from his purse and slapped it on Ma Lao's face, and then took out his mobile phone to play a song. Under the double influence of Le, the ghost baby on Ma Lao's face finally gradually disappeared, and finally returned to normal. Only then did Jo Sun let out a sigh of relief, sprayed himself with breath freshener, put on the mask again, and said with lingering fear, how could the ghost baby suddenly turn back? I remember that during the last physical examination, Mr. Ma, you still have 2 days left for your safety. A year and a half. Ma Lao coughed unceasingly. After this backlash, his face became more wrinkled, his eyebrows were sparse and mottled, and he looked a few years older. Raising ghosts is to use one's lifespan to feed ghosts, and at the cost of gaining the power of ghosts. Every time there is a backlash, the lifespan of the ghost raiser will be shortened by one section. It's resonance. Resonance. Ma Lao nodded deeply. The low-level ghost will spontaneously respond to the high-level ghost, and try everything to return to its side. I have only encountered this situation twice in most of my life, and both of them are extremely dangerous. The ghost baby is a clever evil ghost, which means that it can resonate with at least a level ghost one level higher. Hey? Ghost. Zhou Sun was shocked when he heard this, but if there were ghosts in Yangjiaping, the sensors in the bureau would have swelled and screamed. Besides, if it really resonated with ghosts, why didn't my ghost source respond? Ma Lao didn't speak, he was silent for a while and suddenly asked, "The kid I met today, do you know?" "I know, of course I know, he is a famous person in Yangjiaping." "Mr. Ma, you didn't know that you just transferred here, but almost everyone here knows Wu Rong." Zhou Sun was speechless with regret. Wu Rong can be regarded as a strange person. Others are either full of yin or yang, but he is good. He has no yin in his body, and he is pure and ordinary. He couldn't even pass the first test, so he wanted to be a ghost raiser instead, but although there is no threshold for us ghost raisers, at least the key point is to let the uncle ghost live more comfortably. All the ghosts and mice ignore him, so how can you raise ghosts? Hey, although he has good skills and can fight hard, but he has no talent and can't raise ghosts. He can only be an ordinary person in this life. Ordinary people. Ma Lao gave a short laugh, and the ferocious centipede-like scar on his cheek twitched, and he said to himself, "It's the first time I've seen such an ordinary person. Go back and report to the higher-ups that the area of Yangjiaping is classified as level 3, dangerous level, just say I said it." "Xiao Zhou, you should always pay attention to answering his calls. Remember, you must protect his safety. His report should be dealt with first, understand?" I know, you don't need to say, Mr. Ma, it's our duty to protect ordinary people, but this is the first time I've heard you emphasize so much, Mr. Ma. Does this kid from the Wu family really have some special abilities? Mr. Ma, Ma Lao, why are you ignoring me? Ma Lao. Egg noodles are ready, hurry up and eat something. The egg noodles with yellow poached eggs and a few green vegetables were placed heavily on the table, and the aroma was tangy, and the witch mother complained as she untied her apron, "The two special police brothers are really serious, they didn't even interrogate the prisoner all night. Really terrible. Mom." Wu Rong didn't move his chopsticks. He unconsciously fiddled with the mobile phone given by Zhou Sun. This day's shock to Wu Rong was no less than the rebirth. He was emotionally dull, but he wasn't stupid. At the beginning, with a serious expression, "I have something to tell you. Oh, I didn't expect that our mother and I would think of going together one day." The witch mother raised her eyebrows high and said domineeringly, "Since you are not hungry, then listen to me first. Your grandma's 90th birthday is next week, and she wants to pass on those old man's styles to you. I'm thinking that you don't have the talent to be a heavenly master anyway, and it's hard enough to raise ghosts. Why don't you go back to the Miao village and try your luck? Finally come." Hearing what her mother said, Wu Rong felt that the dust had settled in her heart. Although the world has changed, his mother also told him about his grandmother at this time in his previous life. It's just that Wu Rong was rebellious and lived in a bar at that time, and the mother and son had a big fight when they met each other, and then broke up unhappy. The matter of going back to my hometown was of course nothing. My mother finally got angry and went back alone, but there was a car accident on the road, and the car overturned down the Duliu River. Wu Rong didn't think about anything else when she came back in this life. The first was to teach Sun Anna to eat dog food, and the second was to tell her mother not to die. The world where ghosts and monsters are revived is undoubtedly more dangerous than before. Wu Rong didn't say a word. The witch mother had long been used to his temper, and complained that 3 sticks can't make a dull fart, and settled the matter on her own initiative. It's true that the sun is coming out from the west. Why don't you say those stupid things today, kid? Said that in the end, the witch mother looked suspiciously at Wu Rong. Isn't it because I didn't hold my fart in my stomach? The two used to fight every day without giving each other a step, but this time Wu Rong rarely said anything, which made the witch mother feel strange. Involuntarily, she touched Wu Rong's forehead and muttered in her mouth, "Isn't it true, I have to go to the day-old store to buy an album and play it back, little bastard, I know I will lose money for the family." "Mom! What are you doing?" "Grandpa can't help but go, that's your grandma. I haven't seen you for so many years, and it's shameful not to go back for my 90th birthday. You stay and look at the store, I'll go back alone." Seeing that her mother was rarely stunned, Wu Rong had her own consideration in mind. "My mother was very firm about going back to Miaojiang to see my grandmother, and she couldn't be persuaded once or twice. Even if the world is changed, the time is changed, the car is changed, the accident on the way back to his hometown may not necessarily change." Wu Rong is not at ease. Besides, since the ghost phone call, Wu Rong felt that he must be unlucky to be targeted by some dangerous ghost. He is a person who has died once, and he is not afraid of death, but he also does not want to die in such an unclear way. Going back to my hometown is an opportunity. In this dangerous world, only with strength can we protect ourselves. Wu Rong has a strong sense of crisis and has a strong sense of alertness. He can't learn the magic of celestial masters, he can't raise ghosts and exorcise ghosts. Going back to Miaojiang to see is the only way. It's okay to close the shroud shop for a week and a half, as long as you have enough money to spend. Hearing what he said, the witch mother's tough attitude softened, and she hesitated instead. "Grandma's letter before told you to go back alone. What kind of test is not tested? The old woman is also cruel, and let her only grandson take such a risk." "Oh, forget it, anyway I'll think about it when I have time." The witch mother is a vigorous and resolute person. After thinking about it, she immediately stopped talking about it. She urged Wu Rong to have a meal and take a bath like an old hen, and then sent him upstairs to rest. Sitting on the bed, Wu Rong didn't sleep, and flipped out the phone Zhou Suan gave him. There are very few apps above, and the icons can be counted with one hand. Ding dong! "Have you caught it and sent a new message?" The phone vibrated, and a red 2 appeared on the light blue app icon. Wu Rong clicked on the app called Catched. In addition to the paid section for expelling ghosts, there is also a chat section. In the chat bar, he found the message from Zhou Suan. In addition to the formulaic greeting and reminding him to pay attention to safety, he also sent him a link to the forum. "This is our internal forum. Xiao Rong, you are very interested in this aspect. It stands to reason that ordinary people cannot access this. I secretly registered an account for you. You can only browse on this phone. Don't tell Ma old them. Thanks." Wu Rongzheng needs a way to systematically understand the world. After logging in with the account password sent by Zhou Suan, he starts to look at the most basic background like a sponge that absorbs water. On July 12, 2045, Miaojiang Metropolis Daily published a piece of inconspicuous news that Xiao Feng, a girl in bed 4 of the 444 dormitory of a vocational high school in Miaojiang City, disappeared strangely. But it was found that there was only the picture of Xiao Feng entering the dormitory, but not leaving the picture. Xiao Feng's mobile phone, laptop, wallet, and other valuables are all neatly placed in the dormitory. According to her roommate, Xiao Feng went to the bathroom in the middle of the night and never came back. The police conducted an on-site investigation and found a large group of hair in the bathroom of the dormitory, which was confirmed to belong to the missing person Xiao Feng through DNA identification. But how can normal people be crushed in the sewer? There were different opinions for a while, and this news was seen by a certain netizen, and it was transferred to the local supernatural forum. Soon after, there were more and more cases of mysterious disappearances in Miaojiang city, and their hair and incomplete corpses were all found in the sewers. The victims were both male and female. Taking the 7.12 corpse mud incident as an opportunity, there are more and more supernatural incidents around the world, such as the Hong Kong Island Ghost House incident, the Disney Amusement Park Clown incident, the Munich Spooky Cathedral incident, ghost knocking on the door, ghost phone incidents, etc. Those who have grown from dozens to thousands, and all this is just a harbinger of spiritual recovery. On the 15th day of the 7th lunar month in 2048, the Gate of Ghosts opened wide, and Qilian Tiankeng appeared. At this point, the supernatural recovery came completely, and the Ghost King was born. Countless small countries were destroyed overnight by the Ghost King, the world was in turmoil, and cultures were broken. Many big countries such as Huawei have the ability to see the future and make predictions before the Tiankeng comes, so they can prepare in advance to resist the first wave of ghosts. It is now 2142, almost 100 years have passed since the Tiankeng appeared. Although half of the world has been reduced to ghost territory and has not been recovered, the human safety zone has basically stabilized and a new rule system has been established. In the process of fighting against the ghost tide, the borders of countries became blurred when the fate of human beings lived and died, and many neighboring countries merged and fought side by side. After the war, the original countries did not exist, and only 4 alliances remained: the Asian Union, the European Union, American Union, and African Union. Some scholars speculate optimistically that human beings and evil spirits will ebb and flow, from being strong and weak to evenly matched, and soon human beings will grow enough to launch a counterattack and regain lost ground, and suggest that the 2148 Tiankeng Centennial Day be designated as a new era for mankind. Wu Rong hastily skipped over these historical backgrounds, and he focused on how to become a capable person. It's a pity that if you want to become a celestial master, Yaluzi basically doesn't work, and you must receive an orthodox academy education. It is extremely dangerous to become a ghost breeder. Many people do a lot of outrageous things in order to make themselves more yin, such as abusing cats and dogs, digging up corpses and cannibalizing them, sleeping in coffins and so on. Therefore, ghost raisers must also undergo strict assessment, and the corresponding sections can only be browsed if they reach the corresponding level. The account Zhou Sun gave Wu Rong was only the lowest level, and most of the forums could not be browsed. The few that can be seen are better than none. Wu Rong took a few glances, and finally turned his attention to the community section. Compared with the formal Tianxi Academy and the Ghost Raising Organization, the associations on the internet are much looser. There are not many requirements. Yes, there are all kinds of gossip organizations, but it depends on your own vision whether there are real materials or scams. After observation and comparison, Wu Rong did not join popular clubs such as Photography Society, The Camera is the God, Photographing the Truth, Ghosts Appear, Hunchuan Society, Hunchuan Takeaway, Dare to Buy, I Dare to Sell, and other popular clubs, but searched for relevant Miaojiang, the Association of Miaogu. The Miao border in this world is different from the original world, and there are also unique and small groups of witches and gu masters who are different from ghost raisers and celestial masters. Before going back, Wu Rong wanted to know as much as possible. But Miaogu has been mysterious since ancient times, and it is still a small group now. After searching for a long time, Wu Rong only found a small society called Witch Society. The profile picture of this club is a black dog with baring teeth and claws. It is really small, but there are only 4 people, which will be enough to establish a club standard. The club declaration is, Wu Miao Research Club, welcome all those who love and are interested in Wu Miao to join. Male witch and female gu is a tradition in Miao village, and Wu Miao is another name for male witch gu masters. Wu Rong discovered that although the society called Witchcraft Society was small, it had some skills. There were 4 badges hanging under the head of the society, which were researcher of Ghost King, researcher of Fierce Ghost, specialist in Fusewan, nurturance ghost specialization, all of them have elite purple titles. There is a golden G circle in front of the association, which means that it is an international association, and there are not only members of the Asian League, but also members of the Foreign League. In some respects, these badges are the identity cards of the community. Members of the community can only obtain badges if they meet the corresponding strength or have submitted a corresponding number of research papers. In other words, although the club called Witch Society has a small number of people, it has many powerful people. I don't know how strict the requirements are to join. Wu Rong thought about applying to join. Unlike other associations that required payment of money and other requirements, the assessment popped up by the Witchcraft Association required filling out a 23-page questionnaire with as many as 1,000 questions. Jingle bell, jingle bell. The alarm clock sounded from the bedside. Wu Rong flicked his wrist and pressed the alarm clock. He had been filling out the questionnaire of the Witchcraft Society just now, but he only filled out Onet heard of it. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's time for him to go to the bar for work. Putting away the phone and preparing to fill it in later, Wu Rong got up, but the next moment he found that the alarm clock hadn't stopped. The alarm clock was ringing loudly, and the sound of jingle bells was clear and sweet, but the monotony made people feel irritated after ringing for a long time. Gradually, the sound gradually became blurred, and it sounded more and more like the ringtone of a mobile phone. Wu Rong took a step back calmly, clutching Zhou Sun's cell phone tightly in his hand. Ring, ring, zip, zip, jingle, ring, zip. A fuzzy electrical sound came from the alarm clock, and this time, a layer of mist gradually floated on the clock face in front of Wu Rong's eyes. Without hesitation, Wu Rong immediately dialed Zhou Sun's number. The sound of the phone ringing was extraordinarily long, but before the other party connected, the mist on the face of the clock was thick and thin, and an angry and terrifying child's grimace had already been outlined. Wang, why, don't buy a mobile phone? Cannot get connected. King. You should die. I want to find the resident singer of your bar. Let go, let me in. On the street in the afternoon, under the disgusted eyes of passers-by, Sunan, whose face was covered in blood, smelled sourly of garbage, and whose hair was sticky with blood, was rudely thrown out by the security staff of the bar. He fell heavily on the ground, with burning pain in his back. The electric baton in the security guard's hand prevented Sunan from breaking in. He looked at the bar door, resentful and helpless. Walking staggeringly, Sunan didn't care about the eyes of others, walked to the side of the road and squatted down. The crossing of the Ghost King with the lantern would have turned the entire safe zone into a ghost zone, and those third-rate celestial masters and ghost breeders alone couldn't stop it even if they risked their lives. Sunan gritted his teeth nervously. It is precisely because of Fu Qing's presence that he has resisted the Ghost King for so long. When Sunan was a freshman at Tianda University in the capital, Fu Qing was already the director of the criminal division of Tianda University. He is a once-in-a-lifetime genius, the youngest master figure, a national treasure-level celestial master. He can draw the long-lost top 3 mountain talisman on golden talisman paper at a young age, and when he uses it, he can even suppress the Ghost King. Ask for a match. He has been out hunting ghost raisers or killing ghosts who violated the law all the year round, and occasionally returns to school to teach a class. The people who come to listen to the class range from students to celestial masters of various schools and forces. Sunan didn't a class from Fu Qing in his last life, and he still got news about his life experience intermittently from the school's gossip forum. It is said that although Fu Qing was born in the most orthodox Fu family in Halong Mountain, he was lost for more than 10 years due to some accidents. When he was the poorest, he couldn't even buy talisman papers, so he could only live in bars to make ends meet. Others took it as a joke, but Sunan took it seriously. He was able to go from a poor farm boy to a top student in the capital, not only because of his gentle and good looks. After his investigation and thinking, Sunan found that this national treasure-level celestial master was very likely to sing in Yangjiaping when he was poor. Otherwise, Wai Fuqing has been lost outside, and the ghost king with the lamp was found by the Fu family after destroying Yangjiaping, and King Yun went straight up. More importantly, there was a talisman in the amulet that Wu Rong gave him when he was fleeing. That seemingly ordinary talisman blocked several attacks by the evil spirits, and was recognized by Lin Wenwen as extraordinary. Fu Qing wrote in his early years. Wu Rong grew up in Yangjiaping since he was a child, and the intersection between him and Fu Qing can only be in Yangjiaping. And Sunan remembered that there was indeed a Taoist priest who sang in this bar for a short time, but he was killed by Wu Rong before Sunan could confirm it. Humph, Wu Rong, Fu Qing, you wait for me. God treats me kindly, let me be born again. In this life, Fu Qing, Lin Wenwen, Fu Xuan, the capital is huge, and I, Sunan, must hold all of them in my hands. Inside. Sunan clenched his fists fiercely, staggered to the corner where he could see the gate of the bar before the security guard came to chase him away again, and sat down to guard. But he waited for a long time, until the sun was setting to the west, and he didn't even wait for a figure. Damn it, where did everyone go? Buckle. The slender and clean fingers like white jade knocked on the door, but no one responded. The visitor waited quietly for a while. He was wearing a simple Taoist robe, with a mahogany sword behind his back, and his hair was pulled up by bamboo branches, without any other decorations. But he was really handsome, and his temperament was beyond dust, and even the ordinary clothes were called immortal. The old Liang shroud shop is here. But no one answered. The visitor seemed to have noticed something, and frowned slightly. He went around the back of the shop without making a sound, and then jumped up, stepping on a tree branch as lightly as a white crane with his robe fluttering, and landed on the windowsill of the second floor with 1 foot in 2 or 3, picking up the mahogany sword. The latch opened in response. The Taoist didn't have the slightest sense of trespassing into the house, and calmly entered the room through the window, facing the tense Wu Rong's wide-eyed eyes in astonishment. You gave me too much money the day before yesterday. He was caught by the owner for trespassing, but the Taoist priest didn't show any embarrassment on his face. He spoke openly, with a clear voice. I said, I only accept what I deserve. Now that he is out of the embarrassment, he has come to pay back the money today. The Taoist priest lowered his eyes, his eyelashes were like crow feathers, his black and white pupils looked at Wu Rong, but Wu Rong only looked at his hands. The Taoist priest came from the window, and when he landed, his white jade-like fingers rested on the alarm clock on the bedside table by the window. The mist dissipated, the room temperature warmed up, and the ghost bell that had been ringing just now stopped immediately. The author has something to say, Gui Tong, scared to death. You and I are not meant to be, it all depends on your money. Funny, the future of this article is empty, many things are made up by me, any similarity is purely coincidental. W equals. You gave me 1,700 yuan the day before yesterday. Excluding the remuneration, it was 1,200 yuan more. Wu Rong looked at the Taoist priest, who didn't care about the ghost under him, with a slightly weird expression, and was seriously talking about money with him. At first, Wu Rong didn't recognize who he was, but after thinking about it carefully, he recalled that it was the little Taoist priest who was pushed out by his younger brothers in the bar on the day he was reborn. In all fairness, the little brothers had really good eyesight that day, and even when they met Wu Rong for the second time, they were amazed. Compared with him, Sunan was completely different. It's just that the Taoist priest's aura of not being close to strangers is too deserted, like a flower on a high mountain, which can be viewed from a distance and not be played with. Thank you, Daoist, for saving your life. Wu Rong shook his head, and pointed to his alarm clock. Recently a ghost boss called. If it wasn't for you, Taoist priest, I might be in danger. At that time, the severe cold came, the furniture in the house began to rot, and the walls peeled off, just like the scene of being chased by starving ghosts that day. Wu Rong already knew from the forum that the environmental changes brought about by ghosts are called ghost domains. The ghosts in the ghost domain are almost invincible, and it is impossible for him to deal with them. This Fu Qing. Fu Dao Kang, if you really want to count, I owe you money now. Exorcising ghosts is a hugely lucrative job. To prevent a ghost land from coming, even the lowest ghosts will be paid at least 10,000 yuan. Wu Rong didn't buy insurance for the coming of ghosts. If it was true, he would have to pay the Taoist priest. I failed the Heavenly Master examination, just call me by my name. As if seeing what Wu Rong was thinking, Fu Qing said calmly, it's just a ray of evil thoughts, not real ghosts, it's just a matter of effort. But you are the face of a dead person who attracts evil and attracts respect. Fu Qing was not a meddlesome person, but when he caught a glimpse in the bar, Wu Rong's face was so strange. How could a living person have the face of a dead person? I make my own decisions. Looking carefully now, Fu Qing discovered that Wu Rong's fate was even worse. It's so bad that relatives and friends have been separated and died in vain, which is unprecedented, and the villain is causing trouble recently. If you don't ignore it, there will be a disaster within 7 days. Since we met, we were destined. Although Fu Qing had a cold temperament, he didn't just watch people die. Give you. What Fu Qing took out was a purple paper crane. In other words, it is a talisman seal drawn on purple talisman paper. The exquisite patterns and lines on the paper cranes are drawn with gold patterned cinnabar specially made to draw talismans. Fu Dao, Fu Qing. Wu Rong frowned, shocked. Although he was reincarnated and this is another spiritually revived world, Wu Rong's understanding of Taoist spells and so on was still in the previous world. Unexpectedly, Fu Qing could tell at a glance whether he was dead or not. Can single-handedly suppress ghost calls. Seeing the resolute Taoist put down the paper crane and nodded slightly at him, turned around and left from the window, Wu Rong chased and jumped down without thinking, but the height of the second floor was nothing to him, so he slowed down and let go of his strength. Wu Rong grabbed Fu Qing's wrist. Fu Qing, can you tell me about the fate of attracting evil and attracting worship? The ghost call came twice, and it can now be separated from the medium of the phone, which worried Wu Rong. If this ghost has been following him, wouldn't it be troublesome in the future? He didn't pay attention to the ghost boy's nonsense every time, and the little ghost left and right told him to die. No reason was the reason. Wu Rong wasn't afraid of death, but this kind of indiscriminate and powerless death was really useless. He wanted to figure out where he was attracting those brats. This is destiny, and it cannot be explained in a few words. Seeing the deserted person, Fu Qing had a good temper, and he was not annoyed by Wu Rong's reckless restraint. Instead, he took his hand so that Wu Rong's palm was facing upwards. Fu Qing touched it with his fingertips, and there was a red mole smaller than a grain of rice on the root of the little finger of Wu Rong's hands, which could not be found unless he looked carefully. The mole grows on the little finger, and the ghost energy is haunted. But the double mole grows side by side, and the ghost energy hides in the body and does not come out. It looks like yin and yang are balanced on the outside, but in fact, yin occupies 9 out of 10. The redder the mole, the closer the disaster is, and the ghost energy leaks to attract evil thing. For those who have twin moles, it will be fine if they are happy or mourning. If they die of resentment and resentment, they will be haunted after death. They will become fierce ghosts and kings of ghosts. Wu Rong never noticed that he still had 2 moles on his hands. Fu Qing's hands were very cold, and his fingers were unbelievably white, which made the small moles on his fingertips turn redder. The distance between the two is very close, holding hands, which looks very intimate to outsiders. But both Wu Rong and Fu Qing felt that they were looking down at the mole seriously, and neither of them paid attention to the eyes of others. No wonder. Wu Rong muttered, trying to justify himself in his head. He was born again, and died in a car accident. He may have yin and resentment in his body, and it will affect his body when he travels to this world of supernatural recovery. That's why he attracts starving ghosts and phone ghosts. The starving ghost is okay, but Fu Qing, the phone ghost, also said that its body is not in the vicinity, but just a lingering evil thought. Although it is disturbing, but the power is not strong, as long as you carry the talisman with you, and don't pass by its body, it will be fine under normal circumstances. There are first 7 days after a person dies, and after 7 days of rebirth, Wu Rong's body and soul will be integrated, and the ghost energy will no longer leak out, and he can be easily found by those ghosts. Now that she was reborn, Wu Rong finally understood myself better, but Wu Rong was puzzled. How could a person who is so powerful, who can kill with one glance and suppress evil with one hand, fail the Celestial Master exam? Unconsciously, he asked what was in his heart. I was born with a lost soul. Fu Qing said calmly, people who are born with lost souls cannot inherit the orthodoxy. As he spoke, he pulled his hand away. If nothing happens, see you someday. It was only then that Wu Rong discovered that he and Fu Qing had been holding hands since chasing down the stairs. Both of them had a low body temperature, as if 2 pillars of ice had touched each other. After holding hands for a long time, they didn't have the warm feeling in the novel. It happened, it was a very serious handshake, every day. From shaking hands to letting go, the two thought they were talking about business, innocent and frank. But Sunan, who found Wu Rong's residence after hiding in the alley, was completely shocked, as if he had been struck by the 9 heavens' profound lightning. No, it's impossible, it's impossible. Sunan watched Fu Qing jump out of the window of Wu Rong's house with his own eyes, and then Wu Rong also jumped out, and the two held hands in such a grandiose way in front of everyone. Hold for a full 5 minutes. Sunan saw it from beginning to end. An inexplicable sourness and disbelief welled up in his chest, trying to suffocate him to death. Sunan couldn't figure out how Wu Rong and Fu Qing hooked up. He was beaten to the day of his rebirth, and after his rebirth the memory is fuzzy. I only remember the quarrel with Wu Rong, and I don't have any other memories. What's more, Sunan's eyes are sharp, and he saw the purple paper crane in Wu Rong's hand at a glance. His eyes were out of frame in shock, and he almost screamed. Purple paper cranes. This is the symbol of Fu Qing in her previous life. The talisman drawn by the Celestial Master, and the talisman paper are also divided into grades and types, from the most basic white talisman on bamboo paper to the legendary golden talisman for avoiding evil, white, yellow, red, purple, and gold. There are 5 levels of talisman paper. Purple talisman paper only fuse when can only be used by master-level celestial masters. Leapfrogging talismans can lead to backlash at least, and self-destruction of the path at worst. And this piece of purple talisman is worth 5,000 just because of the talisman paper. It was made by Fu Qing, and its value is even more inestimable. Sunan knew that someone in his previous life was lucky enough to get Fu Qing's purple talisman, and when he took it to auction, he was bid wildly, and finally was auctioned off by an Arab tycoon for $80 million, just to get a chance to meet Fu Qing. How precious, how precious! Why is Wu Rong's luck so good? At the same time, Sunan knew Wu Rong better. He was made of ice, a piece of wood that didn't understand the world. Sunan knew Wu Rong 2 years ago, and it's been 3 years since he was born. Finally, she accepted herself a little bit, but Lin Wenwen's affair was exposed, and she returned to before liberation. Why did Fu Qing hold hands with him as soon as he came up? Sunan's eyes were red with jealousy, his heart was crushed and torn, and he didn't know who he was jealous of. Seeing the two separated, he originally wanted to go to Wu Rong, admit his mistake, lower his attitude, and coax him back first. But the psychological shadow caused by the ghost Wu Rong was so great that when Sunan saw him, his legs trembled reflexively, and he couldn't move forward. After hesitating for a long time, Sunan gritted his teeth and turned to chase Fu Qing. Fu Qing talks about fate, and people who have no fate don't even bother to meet him. Now he is impoverished and rejected by the Celestial Master exam. What a great opportunity! As long as I catch up, assuming there is a destiny, I will pay him to help him tide over the difficulties. Isn't this a natural destiny? As long as Fu Qing can be picked up, Lin Wenwen and Wu Rong are not important. What's more, maybe Fu Qing's temper when he was down was better than when he was a master of heaven, otherwise why would he go to the bar to sing and let a gangster like Wu Rong shake hands? The more Sunan thought about it, the more he felt it made sense. His physical injury hadn't healed yet, and he was out of breath after running for a while. After running for a long time, he was about to catch up. Seeing that Fu Qing was about to enter a shop, the shop owner came out to greet him with a smile. Enough Fu Qing. Dao Zhang, you and I are destined. Roll. Sunan only touched a corner of his clothes, and before he could finish his sentence, a strong force came over him, knocking him over. Sunan was in poor health and was seriously injured. He rolled his eyes and fell unconscious. Sunan was woken up by being splashed with cold water. When he woke up, he found himself locked in a small room with pale lights. His hands and feet were tied to a mahogany chair with a special rope soaked in cinnabar. There was a long table in front of him. Sitting there were two people in black trench coats, one old and one young. On the wall behind them is written "All ghosts and snakes are paper tigers" in characters. Sunan, male, a sophomore in the 40th class of M University, signed up for the National Tianqi level examination in May, and the intended school is Capital Tianda. The old man with an old face and cloudy eyes said solemnly, "This is the interrogation department of the 7th section of the Public Security Bureau. I am Ma Hongbo, a special police officer, and the ghost number is 1570. Some people have reported that you have misbehaved and behaved strangely. It is suspected that you are a ghost. The evidence of the informant is full. Now please accept the investigation." The author has something to say. That's right, it's the police who made the report funny. Have you packed everything? Don't forget anything, it's a 5-day drive. Clothes for food, clothes for your grandma, cousins, and others. Don't hold back the food. Be careful when riding in the car, don't say that there will be any dirty hands and feet. In the bustling station hall, the witch mother chattered about hanging the big and small bags on Wu Rong's hands, almost more anxious than going out by herself. "Oh, your grandmother's body, I've wanted to bring her to the city for a long time, but her old lady is so stubborn." "You two are as stubborn as if you were carved out of the same mold." The witch mother sighed. At the beginning, they said they still had time, and it was only a week later that Grandma Wu Rong's 90th birthday would arrive. However, it would take 5 days just to travel from Yangjiaping to Qiandongnan safety zone, so they didn't have much time to prepare. Originally, she wanted to go with Wu Rong, but Wu Rong was determined. The witch mother was angry at first, but became worried when she saw her off today. After vigilantly looking at the pedestrians left and right, she whispered in Wu Rong's ear, "Have you hidden the talisman that Taoist priest gave you?" Wu Rong touched his chest. The talisman that Fu Qing gave him was carefully sewn into an amulet by his mother, and asked him to carry it close to his body. "What are you touching? Are you afraid that others will know that you are carrying good things?" The hand was knocked off, and the witch mother hated iron and steel in a low voice. "Take a good thank you later, this is a genuine good thing, and it is fate that he is willing to give it to you. Keep in touch with him later. If you can learn 1.5 tricks you don't have to go all the way back to Miaojiang. Bus ZM3056 is about to arrive at the station. Passengers boarding the bus should bring their tickets as soon as possible and line up at the entrance. Bus ZM3056 is about to arrive at the station. Passengers boarding the bus should bring their tickets as soon as possible and line up at the entrance. Hurry up, the bus has arrived, it's time to go. Little bastard, remember to call me when you get in the car. Tell me when you arrive." Wu Rong complied calmly, and effortlessly carried the big bags and small bags along with the crowd to check tickets and board the train. He was tall, a full head taller than the people around him, and he was very handsome, very conspicuous in the crowd. As soon as Wu Rong put away his luggage and sat down, the ant who was in the bed opposite him said with enthusiasm and concern, "Young man is bold, you go out alone without elders watching over you. The Yunangas line has to pass through 5 ghost regions, so it's very dangerous. How dare you come here alone at such a young age?" Wu Rong was only 18 years old in his life. Although his brows and eyes were sharp, his face was still tender. Anyone with experience could tell at a glance that he was not too old. Wu Rong responded, and seeing that he was taciturn and unable to chat, the ant went to chat with someone else. Not long after the vehicle started, the scenery outside the window slowly moved back. Wu Rong put down her phone and waved to her mother on the platform outside the window. When she raised her eyes, she saw in the distance that she was evasive, concealed, and secretly came to see off his little brothers. Wu Rong's mother didn't like his job in the bar the most, and hated Wu, and Wu saw that the younger brothers didn't like it either. Originally, Wu Rong just took a week off at the bar, and didn't elaborate on the matter of going back to his hometown. Unexpectedly, the younger brothers spontaneously came to see him off. The mother, who had always been aggressive and tough on the platform, clasped her hands tightly, and her eyes were red. The younger brothers were also frowning, smoking in silence. Don't blame the witch mother for being worried, don't blame the younger brothers for being worried, and don't blame the ant for being curious. It is really too dangerous for ordinary people to travel far. The scenery outside the window changes, the city is left behind, the sky is glowing with faint blue light, there is no polluted color at all, the blue is pure and translucent. It is said that every city has a formation to exorcise ghosts and prevent ghosts. The safe areas of various cities are covered like an eggshell, and ordinary people will never get out of this eggshell throughout their lives, because it is too dangerous for them. The train whistled, and the light outside the window suddenly dimmed. As if from daytime to late night, the warm yellow headlights turn on amidst the buzzing sound, and the decorative charms engraved on the car body glow slightly to drive away ghosts and evil spirits. The light from the car body vaguely illuminated the surroundings. The grass was luxuriant, the dead trees were ferocious, the muddy puddles were wriggling, and there seemed to be some terrible monsters hidden underneath. In the distance, there are dots of will-o'-the-wisps floating in the distance, eerie, staying far away in the wilderness, as if looking towards the direction of the train. The appearance of these uninfluential ghosts means that the train has left the scope of human civilization and entered the ghost world. Area. It took a very long time from the appearance of the Tiankang, the descending of the ghost domain, to the counterattack of human beings and regaining the lost ground. But until now, half of the land is still shrouded in ghost land. The Asian League is not a complete piece, but divided into many safe areas, safe cities, and each urban area is a large or small ghost area. The special trains between the safe areas are more like extended buses. Connected. The breath carried by the ghost will pollute the surrounding environment and form a ghost realm, just like the starving ghost that Wu Rong encountered that day. But that's nothing compared to the ghost land that the train is driving into now. The ghost domain formed by Clevel ghosts can cover a city, the influence of Blevel ghosts can spread to a province, and the Alavel ghost generals, the legendary Slevel ghost kings, can cover an even more terrifying and unimaginable range. It is said that in the early days of spiritual recovery, a ghost king born in a small European country directly turned the whole country into a ghost domain, and everyone's souls in the country were polluted and became servants of the ghost king. Of course, there are fewer top ghost kings and ghost generals than giant pandas. Most of them are in the depths of the ghost domain. During the journey from Yangjiabing to Qiandongnan, vehicles will only pass through the periphery of a medium-sized ghost domain formed by fierce ghosts and gathered by 4 evil ghosts. The resulting small ghost domain is formed, and the most dangerous time is just passing through the center of the ghost domain. But even with the protection of trains, crossing ghost land is still extremely dangerous for ordinary people. The negative aura in the ghost domain will subtly distort the souls of ordinary people, making them degenerate into ghosts after death, thus increasing the number of ghosts in the world. Therefore, Every train is guarded by ghost raisers or celestial masters sent by the public security. The strong protect the weak, and ordinary people support the capable with all their strength, instead of bullying the weak. This is also the reason why human beings can gain a firm foothold in the spiritual recovery and survive tenaciously. Young man, is going there a tourist? The ant came back after chatting for a while, and talked to Wurong again. Nowadays people can go out for a walk. When we were your age, the alliance was not stable yet, and the safe zone was not safe. As soon as the day comes, the black ghosts will come out to kill people. Whether they can live or not depends on their lives. As she spoke, the ant rolled up her sleeves and exposed her left hand to Wurong. The half of her left hand was scorched black, as if something had grabbed it, and all the fingers from the to the little finger shrank, only the thumb was normal. The ant said that she was bitten by a little ghost. Several brothers, sisters, and parents in her family died, and she was the youngest, hugging the family's big flowers and hiding under the bed shivering. It was the Taoist priest who passed by at that time who saved my life. He was about your age at the time, and he was very powerful. The little ghost lost his soul with a single strike. The Taoist priest said that I was able to survive, thanks to Dawa. The ant touched under the bed, and next to the calico-wrapped luggage was a bamboo basket covered with a layer of cloth. Later the big flower was gone, and I put a stick of incense on it. The ant picked up the bamboo basket, and something moved inside, and it seemed to be alive. "Ma'am, why are you still bringing live animals into the car?" The middle-aged man on the upper bed who was packing his things said curiously, "It's time for the conductor to make an inspection later, you have to hide it well." "How do you talk? I brought it upright. I wouldn't go out without it." The ant gave the middle-aged man an angry look, and simply ignored him, holding the bamboo basket and continuing to chat with Wurong. "Young man, I think you are an honest person. Okay, you were taught by those little bastards. What about raising a pen? It's not too bad luck for a fairy to raise a dish fairy. Safety is the most important thing when you go out, so keep something for self-defense. Here, this is Dawa's grandson." Auntie lifted the indigo cloth covering the bamboo basket, revealing the contents inside. I saw a big red feathered rooster in the bamboo basket. It looks like a chicken at first glance, with a red crest like blood, a sharp hook and a sharp beak, and energetic eyes, like the eyes of an eagle, exuding a sharp energy and a whole body of righteousness. "This time when I go back to the village, I'm sending little flowers to my distant cousin." The ant touched the chicken's head cherishingly, half showing off and half proudly saying, "I think our stockade raised the best chickens in 10 miles and 8 villages, and even the Taoist priests on Qingcheng Mountain came here to buy them. If it wasn't for scaring away the kid with a loud voice, I wouldn't be able to support the Taoist priest." From ancient times to the present, the rooster has always been regarded as an animal that can ward off evil spirits. The rooster crows at sunrise, chasing yin and guiding yang. In ancient times, it was called yang essence. The Taiping Yuan of the Song dynasty wrote that the rooster crows when the sun comes out, and it feels like a kind. Xiao Ziahua screams when she sees ghosts. "Tell me, isn't it better to raise chickens than those ghost foxes?" Wurong nodded. What the ant said really touched his heart. The world is revived spiritually, and ghosts have the upper hand, but they are not invincible. All things have mutual generation and mutual restraint. When one party is strong, the mutually restraining party will also become stronger. If I keep a rooster and black dog or something like that, maybe there will be a warning in advance when the phone ghost calls. Wurong was moved, and looked at Xiao Ziahua. What the ant said was right, the chicken really looked like it had been through the world. Feeling Wurong's gaze, Xiao Ziahua turned her head and looked over calmly. Oh. Hey, hey. What's wrong with you, what's wrong with you?" The ant was so panicked that she almost didn't hug the bamboo basket. The big rooster in the car screamed like crazy, which attracted other people in the car to look over. The big rooster flapped its wings while screaming. It was so powerful that the bamboo basket came out of the ant's hand as soon as it was pulled hard. Was rolled backwards like a ball, rolled all the way under the bed. Some splashes of white liquid were left on the ground, and chicken feathers were still stuck, and Xiaohua was scared out of shit. The carriage fell into silence for a while, except for the loud scream of the big rooster. Wu Rong rubbed her ears, feeling upset, and the thought of raising chickens disappeared in an instant. He had never felt that the crowing of a rooster was so harsh and unpleasant, making people feel irritated. Unconsciously, he cast a veiled glance at the ant under the bed. The rooster crowed with a trembling ending, and then stopped abruptly. "Hey, flowers, flowers!" The ant called out twice in heartache, and murmured, "Why did Hua suddenly call out, 'No, no, is there a ghost in our carriage?'" The author has something to say. Wu Rong, who are you talking about? Smiley face. Detective Sherlock Holmes and Xiaohua, scared. "Don't talk nonsense, ma'am, I'm getting goosebumps." The middle-aged man rubbed his arms and felt strangely cold. "Let's talk to the flight attendant when he arrives later, it's really scary." Wu Rong. A warm and cheerful voice came from the corridor outside their cubicle, accompanied by the faint lemon fragrance of the breath freshener, breaking the dignified atmosphere in the compartment. Wu Rong thought the voice was quite familiar, and when he looked over, he saw Zhou Xuan, a tall and burly man in uniform, with a mask on his face, smiling and leaning against the door, flicking the iron plate on his chest. "Unexpectedly, you Zhou brother and I will be in charge of this train. Hey, let me tell you why Xiaohua is barking. It turns out that you are the policeman. No wonder you said it. It is still young and inexperienced. It can't tell the difference between a wild ghost and a house ghost. Please forgive me. This is a family ghost. The eggs laid by the reed chicken are all the best." While talking, the ant enthusiastically stuffed Zhou Xuan with a lot of things, such as local eggs and farm dishes, and other people in the carriage respected Zhou Xuan very much. There were not many people as enthusiastic as the ant, but they also greeted Zhou Xuan one after another. Seeing people coming and going, it was really not a place to talk. Zhou Xuan blinked at Wu Rong, and after a while, both of them left the encirclement and met outside. "This is my exclusive lounge, you can come here to find me if you need anything." Zhou Xuan unlocked it with his fingerprint and invited Wu Rong in. The lounge is not big, it is a single room, although the sparrow is small and well equipped, it is much better than Wu Rong's hard sleeper. After closing the door, Zhou Xuan's expression suddenly became serious. "I just heard the chicken crowing in your carriage when I went to find you. Is there a call?" "No." Wu Rong shook his head and paused. "Since I met Daoist Fu that day, the phone ghost hasn't appeared." "Then be careful." Zhou Xuan sat upright on the bed, gave the only stool in the lounge to Wu Rong, and lowered his voice. "The car that was going to take the Yunnan-Guizhou line today was inspected by a special person. I can't tell you the specific situation, but the car on the car there is indeed a problem. Normal driving is fine, but when we get to the southeast of Guizhou, the mountain roads are winding and ghostly, and if we are not careful, there may be serious accidents." Wu Rong nodded silently. When the ghost alarm clock rang that day, he called Zhou Xuan directly, and when he sent Fu Qing away, Zhou Xuan went downstairs to Wu Rong. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wu Rong euphemistically raised the issue of possible accidents on the train with Zhou Xuan, since it involved life safety after all. Originally, he didn't report much hope, but Zhou Xuan took it seriously and asked someone to investigate. The car that Wu Rong took was no longer the original one, but had been thoroughly inspected and confirmed to be okay. If you feel soreness between the eyebrows, vision loss, or slight astigmatism symptoms, remember to tell me. Speaking of this, Zhou Xuan laughed and said, "We in Yangjiaping still have a place to recommend to Huaking Buddhist College. Although it is not as good as the capital Tianda, it is also a first-class good school." Since confirming that something happened to the train, Zhou Xuan's attitude towards him has become closer. Wu Rong was worried that in this world of ghosts, whether she would be arrested by relevant departments for research. Who knew that after checking online, he knew that the future can be seen in this world, and there are not a few people who attract ghosts. There is even a special visual ability called Tianyanteng, which is a good seed born to be a monk, and will be especially coveted by ghosts, which is very similar to Wu Rong's current symptoms. Better to be mistaken for anything than to be discovered after death. After interacting with other people in the past few days, Wu Rong discovered that Fu Qing was the only one who could tell at a glance that he had the face of a dead person. He would be much safer after the first 7 days and the ghost energy dissipated. Apart from wearing a mask all the time, Zhou Sun is quite enthusiastic. He can't be idle, and he wants to put a shoulder on his shoulders from time to time. Every time Wu Rong avoids his touch without any trace. Wu Rong was cold by nature, and Sunan had learned from the past, and he didn't like being touched by others. Fu Qing was an exception that day. Zhou Sun was so nervous that he didn't notice anything, and bid farewell to Wu Rong when it was time to patrol the other carriages. There were 3 people on duty on this train. Besides Zhou Sun, who was a ghost raiser, there were 2 celestial masters. After returning, Wu Rong found that ordinary people respected and loved these ability users very much. One of the 2 celestial masters is older, and the other has a childish face. Although both are a little academically reserved, they are also very polite, and there are no those who look down on others and bully the weak. The train travels on the haunted land day and night, occasionally stopping when passing through other safe areas. The sky in Huangchuan is always dark, and it is hard to distinguish day from night. From rebirth to now, Wu Rong finally has the time to think quietly alone. In addition to browsing the news on the internet, Wu Rong has started to fill out questionnaires from the Witchcraft Society. Now that he has filled in 500 questions, the weight of the questions has increased, but they are more weird than before. Most of them are questions about the applicant's personal situation, but the questions are very weird. 506 What does he like to eat? 507 What is his favorite thing to do? 508 What type of blood is he? Who is the he in this question? Wu Rong didn't understand, and he didn't express it at the beginning of the questionnaire. If you don't look at the front and just look at the 500 questions at the back of the questionnaire, it's almost like a quiz asked by an enthusiastic fan. The identity information on the forum is private, and you can only see it when you join the community. Wu Rong couldn't ask others, and the post soon sank. Wu Rong felt that the person who made the question might have made a mistake, and the half-answered questionnaire could not be discarded. In the end, he simply filled it out according to his own preferences. There were a total of 1,000 questions in the questionnaire, and Wu Rong finally completed it on the 3rd day of the journey. Submitted the questionnaire and waited for review. Wu Rong didn't have any hope of passing the application, so he applied to the Turtle Breeders Exchange and Learning Association. This is Zhou Sun's club, which is a small club for relatives and friends of ghost raisers. There are many taboos on the internet. Raising ghosts cannot be said to be raising ghosts, but to use the homophonic word turtle. This time, Wu Rong's application was quickly approved, and Zhou Sun, the deputy head of the club who had deserted at work, gave him a warm welcome, and then brought Wu Rong to join the Ding Talk group. Everyone in the group was also very enthusiastic about the newcomers, and they welcomed them with effervescence, and their personal nicknames were also very interesting. The starving ghost is kept by Crocodile Turtle, the ghoul is raised by Green-haired Turtle, and the hanged ghost is kept by Long-necked Turtle. Zhou Sun nicknamed it Money Turtle. He has a money ghost sore in his throat. The most powerful among all the ghosts. While Wu Rong was flipping through the classified materials of ghosts in the club, the train suddenly shook. The originally smooth road bumped violently, as if the plane encountered strong air currents. Reflexively, Wu Rong grasped the armrest beside the bed to control his body, and looked out the window. He was stunned. Passengers, please pay attention. We are now passing the Qingguoya battlefield site. The strong wind and strong airflow may cause the train to turbulence to a certain extent. This is a normal phenomenon. Passengers and friends, please do not panic. Passengers with hard seats, please confirm whether the seat belts are fastened. Sleeper passengers, please confirm whether the seat belts are fastened, put on goggles, and hold on to the armrests beside the seats or at the head of the bed. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. The broadcast was repeated 3 times, and the passengers who were in a state of chaos quickly calmed down under the comfort of the flight attendant, and put on their seat belts one after another. But Wu Rong stared out of the window intently. His attention was completely attracted by the external environment. In Huangchuan Yanzhai, the thick ghost aura is like clouds covering the sky, but now it is bright outside. The sun shines from the sky, reflecting on the cliffs and the verdant pines and cypresses. It is said that it is a train, but in fact there are not many carriages. It is more like an extended version of the bus, so that it can be difficult to move forward on the narrow rocky road with 9 twists and turns. Looking down through the window is the endless torrential river, which is extremely high and extremely dangerous. But if you look forward, you can see that the river suddenly changed its course, and a large area of the ground under the cliff was sunken. Half of the soil was scarlet and viscous, dry and cracked, and piles of pale skeletons exposed outside the mud and rock layers could be vaguely seen, while the other half of the ground, but it was all scorched black and full of scars, as if it had been struck by lightning, and the rolling and muffled thunder could be heard endlessly. Even though the windows were closed, Wu Rong always felt that he could smell blood. He felt dizzy and wanted to vomit just by looking at the land. And the silence coming from the scorched area made him even more unbearable. He was naturally repelled, and unconsciously felt a sense of tyranny as if encountering a natural enemy, as if there was something in his heart that was about to come out. It wasn't until Wu Rong's chest warmed up that he came back to his senses. Unconsciously clutching the amulet, Wu Rong heard the uncle in the next bed calling his name. "Young man, don't look directly at the battlefield. Young people are too reckless. This is the site of the battlefield where Master Fu led the thunder to kill the Bone Ghost King and the Bone Ghost Kingdom." Shocked out of my soul. Catching the blindfold that the uncle kindly threw, and hearing the word Fu, Wu Rong unconsciously thought of Fu Qing. Master Fu? No way, now there are no people who don't even know Grandmaster Fu. The ant who had already put on the blindfold and strapped on the bed was startled, as if seeing a monkey jumping out of a rock. Even the middle-aged uncle was speechless and shook his head repeatedly. Young people nowadays love the League. Education is so bad that they don't even know the 9 heroes and martyrs who saved mankind back then. If there is no Grandmaster Fu, we are still living in dire straits. How can there be a new alliance now? At the same time, Zhou Sun was sitting with 2 celestial masters in the rest area. Unlike ordinary people who need to wear blindfolds, they can see the battlefield through a telescope made of special materials. Compared with ordinary people, they understand the horror that caused such a huge battlefield site. Unexpectedly, 60 years have passed, and the evil wind of resentment from the Bone Ghost King has not dissipated. Zhou Sun was speechless and couldn't help scratching his throat. Affected by the ghostly aura, money ghost sores faintly showed abnormalities, and the bad breath that had just been suppressed by the freshener came up, but no one noticed it now. It seems that the young celestial master who just came out of practice is staring intently at the scorched black earth, fascinated by it. The patriarch of the Sand King is above. The mysterious thunder descends from the sky, killing evil and demons. Today I finally saw it with my own eyes. There are so many celestial masters who want to apply for this line every year. Isn't it just to witness the ruins of Master Fu? The other person was full of admiration and shock, and said repeatedly, "It's too powerful, it's so powerful, I really want to see with my own eyes the grand scene in the textbook that Master Fu holds the 9-turn lightning strike mahogany sword and kills the Bone Ghost King with one sword. I chose the lightning art because of Master Fu." The young celestial master's eyes were shining brightly. "I have applied for next year's experience in Huangchuan, and sooner or later, I will lead the thunder to kill all evil spirits like Master Fu." As the train moved forward, it was getting closer and closer to the ruins of the battlefield that was densely smashed by the thunder. The two young celestial masters took out yellow paper and cinnabar on the spot, borrowing the power of the thunder that never disperses. Draw thunder charms like crazy. It would be miserable for Josuan, he was trembling, wishing he could curl up into a ball. The ghost is naturally afraid of the cold righteousness left by the sky thunder, and the ghost sword he raised desperately hides down, and it almost hides from the throat to the intestines in a blink of an eye. Dirty things can best restrain a clean aura, but Josuan's face turns blue when he thinks that the ghost sores he has stayed in that kind of place will return to his throat. Scratching all over, fidgeting, unable to stay here any longer, he simply walked out. All the lights in the corridor with the talismans engraved on them were turned off, and it was pitch black outside the train, and all the talismans were dimmed. Now it is completely an ordinary train. The resentment in the battlefield ruins has not dissipated for 60 years, and any new aura of talismans may cause riots. Capable people like Josuan and the two celestial masters would wear talismans to shield their breath, for fear of attracting ghosts and spirits. If it wasn't for the lingering power of the heavenly thunder, I'm afraid that just this large piece of bone and blood mud can give birth to new ghosts. Josuan sighed that it is not easy to kill ghosts completely, let alone the Ghost King. If the original keepsakes are not destroyed, they will come back again, breeding new ghosts soon. Seeing that the train was passing through the minefield and was about to reach the mud and bone area, Josuan finally felt a little more comfortable. Disgusted by the cowardly ghost sore, he walked towards the lounge. Just then, the phone rang. Hello? Mr. Ma, yes, Wurong is in the car now. Now? Now we are about to cross King Guo Cliff, why? Stop, emergency stop, don't cross King Guo, be quick. On the other side of the phone, Mr. Ma said sharply and urgently, the little ghost who followed Wurong is a remnant soul of the number 460 phone ghost who destroyed Chongqing City 60 years ago. A subordinate of the Bone Ghost King, he was beheaded by Grand Master Fu on King Guo Cliff. King Guo ruins will revive its power. Hurry up, or it will be too late, Zi. Beep. The phone was hung up abruptly, and at the same time, abnormal darkness enveloped the car. Ordinary people in the carriage can't feel the ghostly air, they just feel cold. They were blinded by special blindfolds and couldn't see the changes in the environment, and they were still waiting for the broadcast. Why is the air conditioner so cold? The ant murmured and complained in a low voice, hey, where is the wind coming from? It hurts my neck. Did you hear the bell? The middle-aged uncle said something abruptly, which made the car fall into silence. I didn't feel it just now, but there seemed to be a subtle ringing in the silence, the most common ringing of a mobile phone. After a while, the chicken hiding in the bamboo basket remained silent, and the ringing of the mobile phone went from very soft to louder and louder. Suddenly, the ant hesitated and said, it seems to be coming from, under your bed, Mr. Wurong. Wurong couldn't even move. The ringing of the bell was like a wake-up call, coming from under his bed, like a poisonous snake crawling across his back, cold and slippery, creepy. Blindfolded, other senses became especially sharp in the pitch darkness. Wurong felt as if a heavy lump of ice was pressing on her body, blowing cold air. King, I'm coming, I've kept you waiting. The child's voice was exceptionally clear, far and near, no longer the noisy electrical sound, it directly rang in Wurong's mind. It's really not easy to wash away the ghostly aura on your body, but who made you have such an annoying talisman on your body? Hate, really hate. No wonder the talismans didn't work. The temperature dropped even lower, Gitong was moody like a child, and the people in the same compartment who got off in anger were already stunned and shivering, but Wurong only felt a little cold. This kind of coolness is very comfortable, just like walking into an air-conditioned room under the scorching sun, that kind of pleasant feeling that makes people feel comfortable all over. He secretly gathered strength to break free from the restraint, without making a sound. Soon, after losing his temper, Gitong's voice softened, as if he was used to his silence, he prolonged his voice like a spoiled child, "Wang, you were the first one I found, you must make it up to me. Let me eat one of your feet, okay?" Gitong sucked his saliva greedily, and said such terrifying words innocently and naively, as if he was discussing with Wu Rong, "I only eat one foot, only the calf. It doesn't hurt, anyway, soon you will be revived with the help of the remnant soul of the Bone King, let me eat some, I was the first to find you. Why do you call me king?" Wu Rong's brows were furrowed when he heard this, and at the same time, he felt that the restraints on his body were loosened after absorbing the cool breath, and he tried to ask in his mind, one was doubts about this little ghost who was chasing after him, and the other was to try his best. Possible delay. A king is a king. Sure enough, the ghost boy was a little unhappy when he heard his words, "I am 1 foot, Wang, have you forgotten me? It's almost time to get to the place where I first met you, and I always remember how you ripped me apart and swallowed me, leaving me with only 1 foot. It should be half a year later, I can't remember." Wu Rong could understand each word, but he couldn't understand the words combined. "What do you mean after half a year, eat it and tear it up, leaving only 1 foot? Does this kid have special abilities, can see the future?" Or suddenly, an unbelievable idea appeared in Wu Rong's mind. Could this brat be reborn too? By the way, why didn't I think of it? Wu Rong felt a chill on her face, and immediately pulled off the blindfold. Wu Rong opened his eyes, facing a small blue-gray face. There are no pupils, only the whites of the eyes. Yu and Wu Rong's faces are pressed against each other, a mouth full of shark-like sharp teeth glowing black. One person and one ghost are very close. A normal person would be scared to death when they suddenly saw this thing, but Wu Rong. He is hungry. The hunger that rises from the depths of the soul, as if there is not a kid in front of him, but chocolate or something. But at the same time that he was hungry, Wu Rong instinctively felt a little disgusted and tasteless. All in all, when he saw Gitong, he had the feeling of "you can eat it, but it's not necessary. Something is wrong with myself." Wu Rong realized it later, but at this moment, the brat was holding his left eyelid, blowing a cool breeze inside. "You don't even have ghost eyes, I didn't expect you, Wang, to be so weak now." The ghost boy was elated, joy almost popping out from his small grey face. He opened his mouth wide, with a hideous expression on his face. "I've changed my mind, why don't I eat you and become king myself? Patriarch Sanking is here, Master San Mao has returned to the world, the talisman orders you, and Chong Chuan obeys the order. If there is any violation, the Thunder Axe will not tolerate it, and be as urgent as the law." Boom! A thunderous explosion sounded in the carriage, causing everyone's ears to ring and stars to stare at their eyes, but the black mist dissipated in an instant. The ghost boy screamed in shock and anger, and then Wu Rong saw the elderly celestial master standing at the door profusely with sweat, holding a sword in one hand and raising the other, crackling glutinous rice like a celestial girl scattered flowers. The forced ghost boy screamed and retreated to the window. "You guys go!" Zhou Sun then rushed in, with a flick of his finger, the laces on Wu Rong, Dama and the others were untied, "Leave this to us." Boom! With a loud bang, the heavenly master brushed against Zhou Sun's side and flew out backwards, hitting the wall hard. He was covered in blood, the talisman paper was crumbled into ashes, and convulsed in pain, obviously defeated. Zhou Sun uttered a swear word, and rushed towards Gitong regardless of others, directly tore off the mask, and then he opened his mouth at Gitong. The stench filled He Dong Dong's throat, and the white ghost sore wriggled. Zhou Sun's mouth opened wider and wider, and could even fit 2 basketballs. "Gilu, quick, go!" Zhou Sun's cheeks were swollen and his veins stretched out, he was convulsed with pain, and his speech was difficult and slurred. He threw the aunt and uncle in front of him out of the door with one hand, and went to pull Wu Rong who was farthest from the door. But at this moment he rolled his eyes and suddenly began to vomit violently. big a foul-smelling thick yellow-white slurry fell on the ground, like pus after a scar was squeezed, and a piece of pale finger bone of a child clicked into the slurry. The thick black ghost energy gathered, and the ghost boy reappeared from the phalanx. King Hui's body was covered with ghost sores, and it looked painful. The two ghosts were fighting against each other. Wurong by the side. The wind was blowing and the ghostly aura was strong. Wurong reacted very quickly and rolled away to avoid the ghost boy's bite, but he was farther away from the door. He was surprisingly calm under extreme danger. Grab the bamboo basket and throw it at the ghost boy. Ooh! The ravaged bamboo basket finally broke, and the big red feathered rooster flew out. Amidst the high-pitched and sharp crowing, the ghost boy showed a pained expression. He paused, and the next moment, the blood-stained mahogany sword slashed across the pale finger bone. The blood-stained Taoist stood up again, bit the tip of his tongue hard and spewed out a mouthful of blood to stop the ghost boy, and then Zhou Sun pushed Wurong outside. Go! The terrified children's cries in the aisle were mixed with the steward's high-pitched instructions, and it was noisy. All the flight attendants, including the train conductor, were directing the passengers to evacuate. Thanks to their efforts, people queued up to retreat in an orderly manner despite their fear. Wurong quickly caught up with the team, and glanced out the window to see the danger at this time. I saw that the train left the mountain road, half of it was hanging outside the cliff, and looking down from the window was an abyss. Don't squeeze, everyone, don't squeeze, if you have time, we still have time. The train conductor was hoarse, and his not-so-strong body was squeezed to this side, desperately trying to maintain order. At this moment, there was a commotion in the flow of people in front. While everyone was running for their lives in panic, someone went upstream. He was dressed in Taoist robes and stumbled through the flow of people. The conductor of the train turned pale in shock when he saw him. Master Yun, aren't you guarding at the front? Why, there is no danger outside for the time being, I have to stay and fight. The young Taoist priest's face is still childish, but he is only high school age. The fear on his face is still there, but his eyes are very firm. Someone couldn't bear to see it, and whispered, "Baby, you are still a child, let's go together." "I'm not a child, I'm a celestial master." The young Taoist gritted his teeth, his voice was trembling, but he was very decisive, "This is my duty." Without hesitation, he squeezed through the crowd and rushed directly to the compartment where the sound of fierce fighting came. There were a few choked sobs from the crowd, but more people fell silent and accelerated the pace of evacuation, so as not to waste the time that the fighting people were desperately fighting for. This world is very dangerous, and ghosts are rampant, but those rare qualities in danger are even more radiant, able to condense everyone's will like a flame. Amidst the cries of children and the hoarse voices of flight attendants, the flow of people evacuated rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, most of the passengers had safely retreated to the mountain road. At the same time, the sound of fighting from behind the train became more and more intense. The train was trembling, and the howling of ghosts and wolves was so piercing that it made people's scalps tingle, and finally the line was empty, and there was only a mother holding a child left in front of Wurong. The child cried all the way, his voice hoarse, and the mother got out of the car carefully while coaxing her anxiously. Boom! There was a deafening bang suddenly, and the whole train shook violently. The roof of the car shattered, and a figure was blasted out of the air, and hit the cliff heavily, unconscious. It was Zhou Sun who had broken his left arm, and a hole was torn in his throat. Seeing more air intake and less air output, two more figures flew out. The old Taoist priest, who was vomiting blood, held the young Taoist priest whose life and death were unknown in one hand, and the broken train conductor in the other hand, and flew staggeringly to the mountain road, with a dispirited and panicked expression. "Go quickly, the 4-elephant compass can't be controlled for long, its power is getting stronger. The car is sliding down, there is enough time, there are battlefield ruins below, even if the ghost goes down, it will be swallowed up." Suddenly, the heart-piercing cry of a child came from the train, and the Taoist's expression changed suddenly. No, there are still people in the car. The completely unbalanced train tilted like a seesaw, and it would not take long for it to fall into the abyss. The exit was close at hand, but Wu Rong was blocked. The shock came too suddenly just now. The mother staggered and pinned herself to the ladder, her bones broke with a click. The unsteady child fell to the ground and rolled a few meters along the sloping carriage, and hit the corner heavily, bleeding from the head and crying loudly. "My child, my child!" The mother's painful face was covered with cold sweat, and she was about to cry out of anxiety. Seeing this, Wu Rong strode back a few steps and picked up the crying child. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The mother's black hair was disheveled. She looked at the child longingly, and tried her best to avoid the pain. "Please take him away, please step on me. My foot is broken and I can't move. The car is about to fall off a cliff, it's too late, you hurry up, take him away." The angle of the train's inclination was getting bigger, and the speed of the downward slide was getting faster and faster. The sharp earth and rocks scratched the young mother's hands into flesh. She endured the pain and lay down as much as possible. The way to life. The car is about to fall off the cliff, and as long as you step on it, you can escape from death. Wu Rong didn't speak, but his eyes sank, making his expression even more stern. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the Taoist priest rushing forward outside, knocking the child in his hand, and threw it out skillfully without hesitation. It just hit the Taoist priest's hand that he hurriedly reached out to catch it. The seriously injured Taoist fell back, but Wu Rong had already turned his head, and with all his strength, he kicked heavily at the junction of the train and the stairs. Boom! The hastily placed folding ladder was unstable, and Wu Rong was so strong that he kicked it loose with 2 feet. At this time, the train tilted more than 45 degrees, and it was difficult for people to stand on it. Clutching onto the handrail, Wu Rong kicked hard for the last time. The steps finally fell, and the mother whose foot got stuck fell down, and was caught by the flight attendants who rushed over at the same time. "Young man, jump off! The car is going to fall off the cliff!" The train conductor shouted anxiously from below, and Wu Rong swayed. The current train is like a Titanic that hit an iceberg and sank. It is extremely difficult to maintain balance. Aiming at the landing point, he let go of the armrest and jumped, and the howling wind passed by his side. At this moment, a chill came from behind Wu Rong. He saw the stiff and dull face of the train conductor, and heard everyone exclaim, "Watch your back!" The Taoist who fell to the ground threw the mahogany sword with the last of his strength, but he was exhausted, and the mahogany sword passed Wu Rong's side and fell into the abyss. The bone-chilling coldness froze Wu Rong's body. The sound of the wind and the haunting sneer of the ghost boy could be heard in his ears. "King, I've got you!" In the next second, Wu Rong was caught by the ghost boy and fell off the cliff together with the train. The author has something to say. The curse of attracting thunder. From Beta Here We Come, Here We Come. The protagonist of the Standard Point family falls off the cliff W equals. The next chapter beats the ghost boy violently. The golden finger falls off the cliff. A long time ago, Wu Rong went to an amusement park with Sun An's sister, and was dragged by the domineering girl to ride a jumping machine. He never knew that he was a little afraid of heights, until the feeling of weightlessness at the moment of falling from a high altitude was like steel. Big hands clenched his heart, and everyone else was screaming, but he couldn't make a sound. His eyes were tightly closed, his face was pale, and he was almost suffocated. The cliff was higher than the jumping machine, and the strong wind made Wu Rong's skin ache, especially his shoulder. The ghost boy greedily bit down. The severe pain was not coming from the body, but from a deeper, more fragile soul. But before the ghost boy bit it, a purple light lit up and smashed it suddenly. "What?" The sharp and ear-piercing whistling made Wu Rong have a splitting headache, and his chest felt hot. It was the amulet with the paper crane talisman that was heating up. The defeated ghost energy quickly gathered again, and the appearance of the ghost boy was more terrifying than before. It is now like a mass of flowing oil, and the viscous, almost liquid black slurry is stained with streaks of blood red, pulsating continuously, like the capillaries of some monster, filthy and filthy. Eat you, I want to eat you. The filth slammed into Wurong's chest, sending him flying. Wurong, who was pale because of the fall from the sky, felt light all over. Looking down, he could see the scarlet land approaching rapidly through his body. Wurong saw myself falling not far away, her eyes closed tightly, and her whole body was paralyzed. Wurong's soul was already unstable, but the ghost boy knocked him out of his body. Boom! The sound of thunder resounded across the sky, and the originally clear sky turned gloomy in an instant, thick black like splashed ink, and the dark and gloomy air connected with the rolling clouds, just like a black pig crossing a river, in which there was faintly a rich and extremely rich and ominous scarlet, which was the ghostly aura, a sign of the birth of a great ominous ghost. The wind howled, the lightning flashed and the thunder rumbled, and the arrogant ghost boy suddenly shivered. The instinct of fear and awe made it panic and tremble, but a thought of greed made it crazy. After a pause, the ghost boy continued to rush towards Wurong, and the thick black ghost pulp opened its mouth like a blood basin to swallow him up. The talisman is on Wurong's body, and the unguarded soul is like the most tempting delicacy in front of it. Dangerous and murderous intent enveloped Wurong's eyes, and he was really angry. What? Amidst the sharp and mournful howls, the thick black ghost paste around the ghost boy who had just rushed forward suddenly collapsed, as if being crushed by a higher level of power. The greed on that blue and black face faded away, leaving only endless fear and fear. Not even daring to struggle at some point, Wurong grabbed its throat. Ordinary people are completely powerless, but it is easy for the soul to go out of the body. The current state made him feel indescribably happy, like a ferocious beast breaking free from its shackles, heartily. Wurong was ruthless and pointed straight at Gitong's chest like a knife, and quickly grabbed the blood-stained pale child's phalanx. Only by destroying the token of origin can the ghost really die. Wurong remembers what Josun said clearly. There was a crackling sound, and Wurong exerted force with his hands, as if crushing a humble worm. Ah 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 ah! It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, please forgive me, please forgive me. I don't dare anymore, never dare. Amid Gitong's painful and desperate wailing and begging, Wurong withdrew his hand and saw the broken finger bone. How terrifying is it to crush the original token of an evil spirit with bare hands, and even those powerful celestial masters cannot easily do it. Wurong didn't know, he just felt that in the state of his soul, he was extremely happy, invincible, and the pleasure of omnipotence could sink the most determined person in the world. But at the same time, he was very hungry, so hungry that he couldn't restrain it, his soul seemed to be leaking, and there was an unbearable sense of emptiness in the deepest part. 1 second Wurong was still thinking about how his soul could return to his body, and the next second he was driven by instinct and swallowed the broken finger bone in one gulp. Boom! The ghost boy's scream stopped abruptly, the world in Wurong's eyes shook violently, the blue sky and white sun were dimmed, the sky was spinning, and his vision changed, as if he saw another world. Mountains collapsed, rivers stopped flowing, and the vibrant forest turned into barren, dead, and scorched land in a blink of an eye. The chaotic world has turned into a monotonous black and white, the dense will-o'-the-wisps burn forever on the cracked earth, and the rich blood dyes the river red, which is the only bright color in the black and white world. The world has become Avasai hell. He heard the wailing and screaming of countless people, and heard the crying and shouting of despair. Thousands of fierce ghosts float in the sky, ghosts crawl out of cracks in the ground, white skeletons walk out of rivers, lakes, and seas, and those with many skeletons cut off rivers and rivers. All the ghosts in the world rushed towards him, but Wurong was not afraid. He wears a bone crown, sits on a throne made of bones, and overlooks all ghosts coming to court. Boom boom, deafening thunder came from the sky, and the strong ghostly aura suddenly rising from the ancient battlefield shook the world. With a flash in front of his eyes, the hallucination disappeared, and Wu Rong, who was about to fall to the bottom, saw the center of the battlefield ruins. The mud covered with bones was surging like a wave, setting off a huge wave of 100 meters, and the blood mud attracted by Wu Rong's breath was like a greedy and terrifying head. The monster will swallow him up. All the blood and mud poured into the air, revealing a scarlet skeleton that was not too tall. It is bright red, full of blood, and the strong evil thoughts it emits are tens of thousands of times stronger than Ghost Boy's. At this time, crackle! The purple thunderbolt fell from the sky and struck the churning mud fiercely. The thunder that can cleanse all evil forces in the world was attracted by the ghost energy and fell one after another. The blood mud that was split was sluggish, and the cloudy energy in the air was suddenly cleared. Wu Rong shivered. The fear of the extreme danger brought by the dead thunder made him wake up instantly. He instinctively knew that Tian Li was the nemesis of all souls, and his soul would be wiped out immediately if he got a touch of it. Without any time to hesitate, Wu Rong rushed straight to his own body that was about to fall to the ground. A needle-like tingling sensation came from behind, and the thunder that was aroused by the ghost energy was out of control. In addition, not far away was the ruins of Master Fu Yin Li, and the up and down motion made the thunder not stop easily. Hurry up, hurry up! Wu Rong's soul was automatically sucked in as soon as he got close to his body, and before he got out of the dizziness, a creepy sense of extinction enveloped him. A living person would also be struck to death by lightning, not to mention that he still carried a ghostly aura. From a ghost to a human, his whole body was as cold as ice. Only the talisman on his chest was warm, even a little hot. With the thunder on his back and the muddy ground in front of him, Wu Rong didn't know whether he would be chopped to death first or fell to his death. The nausea and dizziness of weightlessness came, and Wu Rong closed his eyes, waiting for death. Suddenly, an extremely cold breath gushed out from below, supporting him, as if the ground was not blood mud but a freezer. The rumbling thunder suddenly stopped, and time was frozen. Before Wu Rong could open his eyes, his throat tightened suddenly. Some icy force grabbed his neck and he could not resist. The extremely terrifying aura made Wu Rong's hairs shudder, and the ghost aura dissipated completely from his body, just like a young ferocious beast encountering a natural enemy, instinctively making him try his best to hide it as if he was feigning death. But he had already been caught, and there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at him without any emotion behind him, examining him, full of madness, violence, and coldness. An unprecedented death crisis shrouded Wu Rong, who was strangled by the neck, unable to look back. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a slender, translucent hand that was so pale that it didn't look human, passing by his ear, and then casually crushed thunder. Big evil ghost! All ghosts are afraid of thunder, and there are very few who can be fearless and have no taboos. It is undoubtedly not the great evil ghost. Wu Rong thought of the red skeleton and bone ghost king's remains under the mud just now, but he didn't have time to think about it. The world was spinning, Wu Rong was thrown to the ground, and his back was smashed into the smelly mud, and there was severe pain. Gritting his teeth, he finally saw the true face of the ghost that grabbed him. He has black hair like a waterfall, is dressed in red, his face is like ice and snow, his eyes are closed, and his lips are pale as if nothing. Wu Rong couldn't see the big ghost's true face clearly, his color was very light and ethereal, as if he would be blown away by the wind in the next second. Thunder and lightning struck his back one by one, and he stood motionless like a rock. The lightning illuminated the drops of blood that fell on Wu Rong's body, leaving circles of crimson in circles. He was bleeding all over his body, his hair, face, and robe were all stained red with blood. Not a single inch of his body was intact, and there were dense scars everywhere, as if he had been tortured. The ghosts who died after inhuman torture are the most terrifying and dangerous, full of resentment. The red clothes on his body were actually stained red with blood. The thunder and lightning finally stopped, leaving only the rumble of thunder in the air. The cold came from the place where Wu Rong came into contact with the ghost. The other party was looking at him, like a giant overlooking an ant, indifferent. the sixth sense crazily screaming for danger, but he was completely unable to move due to intimidation. Wu Rong watched helplessly as the ghost leaned over and hugged him. As if falling into an ice hole, even the soul will freeze, only the amulet on the chest is still a little warm. Wu Rong's teeth chattered, his cheeks felt cold, and he realized it later. The ghost was licking his blood. The scratches on the face from the gravel, the blood stains on the lips, the scratches on the exposed skin when it fell, the snake-like coldness passing through the wounds. It does not hurt, because it has already lost consciousness due to the cold. There is no ambiguity at all, just like a beast drinking a mouthful of warm blood before devouring its prey. It seemed that the blood was too little, and the cold spot moved to Wu Rong's chest, right above the heart. The hand that just tore Lei Ting fell there. The fingers were slender and pale, the nails were neat, translucent, and clean. It was completely impossible to see that he had just torn Lei Ting to pieces. Suddenly, the fingers snapped and pulled something from Wu Rong's chest. It is a talisman. The big ghost tore it off and shredded it, grabbed out the paper crane inside, and paused for a long time. Losing the last heat source, the excessive coldness and the force measure of the exhaustion and pain just now made Wu Rong unable to struggle and fell into a coma. After an unknown amount of time, Wu Rong woke up. Wu Rongfa was stunned for a while about the fact that he was not dead, but it was the throbbing pain in his arm that brought him back to his senses. He appears to be in a rough country infirmary now, with a bandage on his left arm, from wrist to upper arm. Wu Rong's first reaction was to touch his chest, and sure enough the amulet was gone. His thoughts were confused for a while now, not knowing whether he was dead or not. His body was still hot, but if he wasn't dead, why didn't the ghost kill him? Where did it go? Wu Rong, you're finally awake. Zhou Sun's loud and excited voice could be heard from a long distance away. He didn't wear a mask this time, and a thick bandage was wrapped around his neck, which was extremely funny. Zhou Sun threw himself down beside Wu Rong's bed like a big dog, and said without concealing his worry, "Fuck, I thought you were gone. You didn't know at the time that the ghost boy caused the revival of the ancient battlefield." Fortunately, Master Fu Leiwei was still there. He cracked dozens of thunderbolts, and the ghost energy was completely wiped out. Zhou Sun couldn't stop talking about it, and Wu Rong roughly understood what happened. Although he was dragged by the ghost boy and fell off the cliff, he died without any chance of death, but after the thunder dissipated, Zhou Sun and the middle-aged Taoist did not give up, and carefully went down the cliff to search on the ancient battlefield. Wu Rong is still breathing. If it weren't for the clash of ghost energy and thunder that consumed most of the aura accumulated in the ancient battlefield, Cheng Daozang and I really wouldn't be able to get along. Talking about the scene at that time, Zhou Sun was terrified, and finally he cheered up, and said with a smile, "Wu Rong, you are also blessed if you survive a catastrophe. I haven't congratulated you yet. Congratulations on becoming a ghost raiser." The author has something to say. Reborn number 1 ghost boy is getting a bento. Take it away, carry it away, the next rebirth is ready. Fluffy is not a bone, he is much higher than the bone. Ghost King equals W equals.